Our live feed is working. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening. Welcome and thank you, everyone in the audience joining us tonight. I call this meeting of Montgomery County School Board to order at 5:05 on June 9th, 2020. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have an agenda. Next item is paying our bills. May I have a motion to approve the payment of our bills?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Parton. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Cass. Any questions regarding the bills? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We paid our bills. Next item is our business part of the meeting. And it starts with our facilities update, Dr. Meyer or
Okay.
Mr. Kranz.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Karan. I appreciate that. First, for a facilities update, something you all have been interested in getting more information on. I'm going to ask Mr. Krantz if he'll fill us in here.
Yes, sir. So we've talked about, we submitted to the town of Christiansburg a rezoning request. Currently, the operations center is zoned R2, and they think that the appropriate zone is B3. Prior to the pandemic, we were scheduled to go in front of the Planning Commission, but because they were unable to get a quorum of their staff, it was tabled. We're coming back on June the 22nd at 7 p.m. And the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on our request. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation that their June 29th meeting at 7 p.m. And then the Town Council will hear via public hearing the request on July 14th at 7 p.m. and then vote on July 28th at 7 p.m. As we recall, the things we have left to do on the Operations Center, the big things is to take the gym, convert that into a bus garage. That's needed because our current garage is not large enough, nor do we have the space to do the things we need to do with washing the buses and stay in full compliance with the Environmental Protection Act. We work and operate under the Montgomery County permit, and so it's imperative that we get into compliance. And then the other thing we'll do is actually move our buses to the Operations Center on the ball field, which we have done in the past. Historically, we have averaged at any given time on the low end, about 20 buses would be on this property. During the summertime, we've actually hit as high as 70 buses on the property. So this has been a site that we have used for buses in the past, and we continue to do it when we need to. Next thing is on the old Blacksburg Middle School site. When they were the town of Blacksburg and Midtown Developments. We're trying to get some things worked out on title to sites related to construction. There was a small sliver of the site that we could not, the lawyers for both the town and Midtown, as well as our council, we could not determine if it was in the meets and bounds. However, all parties acknowledged that in 2010, when the school board transferred the property to the county, and then the county subsequently transferred it to the town of Blacksburg, that the intent was all rights to any and all property in that block were to be transferred to those entities. And so tonight, the town of Blacksburg's hearing that the deed has been worked out, the parties are agreeable to it, and they'll accept the revised deed. And we just wanted to give you the heads up because that is something that will be discussed at the town of Blacksburg's council meeting tonight.
All right.
There's no need for any action on our part, on your part.
Any questions from anyone regarding these items?
Mr. Kranz, any of those hearings, commission meetings, or council meetings are open to public at this time?
They all are open to the public. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Mr. Krantz.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Yes.
All right, next, we're going to go into some planning information for the reopening of school. Our team, with the help of the advisory committees that were formed at elementary and secondary, have done an excellent job in putting things together. And we're going to go through some plans and some options here. And we're going to start with Ms. Whitaker.
Evening. So we want to share with you tonight, some of you may have gotten to watch the governor's press conference today, but he did release some information about the reopenings for school. And so we want to share with you an update of what that means. And then we'll also have share from the 2 advisory committees as well. So currently we're in phase 2, as you know. Instruction is being able to be provided now at this time. And that means that during a phase 2, you could provide PK3, SPED, and ELL students, special education students, ELL students, as services, face-to-face. Everybody else would be virtual learning. There's 6-foot restrictions in place. A 50-person limit on large gathering is still in place. Daily health screenings for students and staff members. Face covering by staff when at least 6 feet of social distance cannot be maintained. Face covering for students as developmentally appropriate and in settings where distance cannot be maintained. For students, it's a recommendation and not a mandate, but it is something that would be recommended at that time. Okay, Brenda, if you go ahead and go to the next one. So phase 3, although that date is yet to be determined, our hope is that we would be in phase 3 when schools reopen. And phase 3 allows for face-to-face instruction for all students with appropriate prevention strategies in place. Physical distancing is a priority. So although we can educate all students because of some of the limitations in place, that would impact our ability to have everybody in school at the same time. We can bring different groups of kids and bring all kids, but we may not be able to bring them all together because of the social distancing requirements. The large gathering limit would be determined by the executive order that's in place at that time. And he did indicate today that athletic and extracurricular may continue with some mitigation, but that we would be getting more guidance on that from the VHSL. Go ahead, Brenda. So as I said, due to those restrictions in place in phase 3, we're going to really plan really hard for that phase 3 because everything else is a scaled back version of what we do in phase 3. So a likely scenario that would look like is schools opening on time with our current calendar, with a combination of remote learning and face-to-face with those social distancing restrictions in place. So this would require us to have some flexibility of our scheduling and differentiated access for different groups. The goal of the plan that was rolled out today, they focused strongly on equity and making sure that that was a centerpiece of their decision-making when they released the rules to us of who we could bring to school at what times. It does remain possible that there could be intermittent or extended closures. And so we need to be able to move right back and forth into them whatever phase we're in, if we were to be moved a phase back, we really need to have a plan for stepping back from 3 to 2 and then 2 to 1, if that happened to be the case. Go ahead, Brenda.
So the transportation is a driving factor in this process. Currently, an elementary school bus, we can set a capacity of 77 students to the bus. Under the social distancing that everyone's talked about, 6 feet apart from each other, we're only able to use every other seat in kind of a checkerboard pattern. So the capacity goes from 77 students to 13. So to give you an example, in elementary schools, we right now, excluding our special ed runs, we run 74 regular buses. If we were to maintain the existing number of students we transport daily, we would need an additional 190 school buses to run everybody on the 6 feet marks. Now, to maintain the distancing, what we're proposing is for 4 days a week, we would run 7 days. That's 28 runs in a week, which today we normally run only 20 runs per week. So you can see the increase. And typically a school bus, including the cost of the drivers, about $3.15 per mile. So it gives you an idea of the additional cost that would be needed with those increase in runs. You can go ahead, Brenda, please. You've heard the information that's been shared from VDOE. VDOD's position is that the Virginia Department of Health, they do not plan on challenging or changing what the Virginia Department of Health is recommending, which is a 6-foot social distancing. However, in conversations that have been held with Dr. Lane, you heard in the presentation today that mitigation factors can be considered and taken into account by a school district in moving forward. Along that lines, we've had conversations with our school board counsel, Brad King, and we also have had conversations with our insurance carrier. Under Brad, you get what's called sovereign immunity that governs the school board. So the actions that you as a board take, as long as they're your normal actions that you undertake in a given day, you're governed by sovereign immunity, which protects you from any lawsuits that could take place as a result of those actions. In the case of Baycorp, who provides our general liability insurance coverage, they have said that they will fully cover any and all plans that we wish to take as a district to educate our students. So what we're proposing, what's being discussed tonight with the option 1, and then you'll see option 2, is one that Baycorp as well as council are comfortable that we can proceed with, subject obviously to what VDOE mentioned today is getting approval on our mitigation plans. Brenda, please. So if we go with option 2, it's a mitigation approach. And we went from 7 runs to 5 runs. What this does is we did this by increasing the number of students on each bus. So instead of having a capacity of 13, we would do 1 student per seat. That's 26 seats are on a bus. So we would have 26 students. In order to do the mitigation, 1, mask would be on the bus, and we would ask all students to wear a mask, please. And we would have bus aides on the bus to assist, because the driver driving the bus would be challenged to get students to enforce wearing masks, or trying to encourage wearing masks. The bus aides would help us to try to get students to wear those masks. That also, as you can see going down, we went from 28 runs per week down to 20 runs per week. And that's in line with what we do today. And that would also generate a significant savings on our fuel as well as the cost of our drivers. Ms. Brenda? Here's a summary of what the pros are and when you look at the two. The 6-foot distancing on the right-hand side obviously would maintain social distancing. But I can tell you that riding a bus, our children have a tendency to move around. So even if we were to have social distancing, we would have challenges trying to keep that in place while we're also asking a driver to drive a bus on some of the roads that we do. If we were to do that, we'd be in full compliance with the VDH recommendations. However, we believe the mitigation efforts that are covered by both the mask as well as the aid being on the bus We'll make it easier because we can provide more students, we can deliver more students to our schools, giving our teachers access to their students, as well as our students access to their teachers. We also think that it'll mitigate the long-term losses that our students have experienced today. And if we continue minimizing their participation in school, challenges that they will have. This mitigation would increase the number of students in schools on the days. It allows for a much more consistency in our travel for our elementary students. If you tried to do 2 elementary runs or whatever configuration, it starts to present challenges. It would make our afternoon transportation much easier and allow us to be more normal than we are with option 1. And overall, it's a significant cost savings that'll be generated with the option 2, which is the mitigation plan as we presented. Ms. Brenda? I believe that's
I've got a
Barbara.
question. I've got a question with the last slide. So is that 1 aide on a bus, or would we need more aides on the bus?
Right now we're planning on it 1 aide on the bus, but depending on your situation, you could adjust accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I believe is it Ms. Wickham?
Yes, sir. We've received feedback and input from our students, our parents, our teachers, our administrators. As you can see, on April 15th, we surveyed our parents and students regarding their experience with distance learning. On May 18th, we sent out a survey for our teachers to also get information about their experience with distance learning. Additionally, we collected feedback from our teachers about what they might need in terms of professional development moving forward. Our advisory committees, which are made of a cross-section of our stakeholders, including our teachers and parents and administrators. On secondary, we have students as well. Our first advisory committee meetings were held on May 26th. Our leadership team met on June 3rd to start talking about what school schedules could look like. We then met with principals on June 4th to again talk about school schedules, what they might look like in phase 3. Asked them to begin working on thinking about transportation and how we might be able to bring students to school and meeting social distancing guidelines. And our advisory committees met again today to take a look at the scenarios that we're getting ready to share with you. Brenda, next slide, please. So in planning to reopen our elementary schools, at the elementary level, we're considering 2 options for staggered scheduling. Pre-K through 2nd grade students would attend school 2 consecutive full days each week. In grades 3 through 5, depending upon which option we look at in terms of transportation really drives this in terms of how many students we can get to school on the bus. Grades 3 through 5 students would either attend school 1 day or 2 full days each week. Students with disabilities, our English language learners, and our students without cellular access would have the opportunity to attend school each day. And then we would also provide virtual or remote instruction for our students at home in the groups that aren't at school on that given day. Brenda? So all of our teachers, grades K through 5, would start instructing students on how to use Chromebooks, video conferencing, whether that be Zoom or Google Meet, and Google Classroom. All students would be able to access instruction at home through video conferencing. So while the teacher is in the classroom teaching, he or she could turn on Zoom or Google Meet so that the children at home would be able to see and hear what was going on in the classroom. So transportation, again, option 1 is if we use the 6 feet social distancing guidelines. In that particular case, option 1, pre-K through 1st grade to manage the number of students on the bus would be dropped off at school in the morning by 9 o'clock, and they would be dismissed at the end of the day at 3 o'clock. Grades 2 through 5 then would be dropped off by 10 a.m. an hour later, and be dismissed an hour later at 4 o'clock. Option 2 that we talked about, with the mitigation of wearing a face mask and 1 student per seat, we would then be able to bring in pre-K through 5th grade students on their regular school day, which is approximately 9 to 4. Okay, Brenda?
Got a question. So on
Yes.
the second bullet, can we go back to the last slide? All students would be able to access instruction at home with the video conferencing. So since school is compulsory, does that mean students would have to be in the virtual classroom during the school day?
No, that's a great question. Students would have the opportunity and parents would have the opportunity to be able to turn on their computers, log into Zoom or Google Meet, whichever platform we're using, and to be able to hear the instruction that's going on.
So how could that be equitable?
All right, so yeah, I'm not sure if Ms. Wickham, I hear what you're saying, Ms. Franklin. You know, there would be some requirement for students at, you know, during part. I think what this piece is, Ms. Wickham, dealing with the video conferencing, is if a student did not want to come to school, correct?
Correct. And additionally, one of the pieces of feedback that we got from our parents as we were collecting information through our surveys and our advisory committee was that they felt like they needed to have help as well. So in order to help our elementary children at home and to help their parents, we would like to be able to provide this for anybody who wants to be able to listen in to hear what's going on.
So that would be anyone who is not actually coming to school that 2 days a week. Those students who are enrolled coming 2 days a week would also be asked to be a part of the video conferencing when they're not there the other 2 days of the week at certain parts of the day. So they would be, even though they're coming 2 days, like say it's Monday, Tuesday, there would be students who would be required to be online Thursday and Friday as well at certain parts of the day.
I'm still having a problem understanding how this is going to be equitable.
All right, so
But that's
we've
just
addressed-
option 1, correct?
well, that would be all options. You know, option
okay.
1 is
Ridiculous.
option 1 is basically pre-K to 2 days a week and 3 to 5 1 day a week. Option 2 is pre-K to 5 2 days a week.
It might help if we move forward and take a look at the 2 options on schedule to have a visual, and then we'll come back to the question.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So option 1 with social distancing on the bus of 6 feet and 13 students on the bus, that would allow us to have our primary students in school, as you can see, 2 full days each week. We would divide the group of students pre-K through 2nd grade. Each grade level would be divided into 2 groups. And again, they would be able to attend 2 full days. Grades 3, 4, and 5 would be split into 4 different groups. And then they would be able to attend 1 day each week. Again, this is to allow us to be able to transport students and maintain social distancing. You can see that on Wednesday, schools would be closed to allow for deep cleaning of our facilities. We could use that as well as a teacher work day, professional development that teachers might need. Faculty meetings could be held that day. And while at home, that would be a student work day. So then based on what was taught on Monday and Tuesday, for example, then follow-up information to support learning would be sent home for the remainder of the week in that time. Okay, Brenda, option 2. So option 2 then is looking at 1 student per seat with masks. And this way, all students, all elementary students would be able to attend school 2 days each week.
And that's mask on the bus, not at school.
Correct.
Right.
And I can say that feedback from the elementary advisory committee this afternoon or this morning, we met at 11 o'clock. The teachers on the committee said that they want children in the building as much as possible. They want things to go back to normal and they can have children every single day. But of these two options, obviously this was their preference. One of the parents on our committee is a doctor, and she shared with us that this option was the best option because you keep the same groups of students together, grades pre-K through 5, each day when they're in the building. Okay. Next slide.
All right, any questions about that?
Hey, I have a question. It's actually more about the transportation, but just came to my mind as we were going through all this. Now we're making these assumptions of how many students are taking the bus based on current ridership, or
We are, and we'll get to this later in the presentation. We're going to do a survey next week, or by the end of this week, to get. When it's not just a survey, it is an actual questionnaire for families to fill out.
like a commitment to whether you will.
Correct.
Because I'm wondering if you will have more people who will opt to bring their students to school versus riding on the bus, so you free up more bus space. Of course, then the lines outside the school will probably be
right. And you know, we already have very long lines. So
I know. Been in.
Yeah. So you know, the question is how many more. We did this based on the parents that already bring their kids to school. All right. We didn't include them in our numbers and being able to do this. And so this would be more of an encouragement to have more actually
or carpools or
do this. Correct. And of course that might change things, you know, as we move forward as well. But you know, at this point, we're working off the information that we have.
Okay.
But we're planning on. We'll talk about the survey, you know, towards the end as to what we're going to ask. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Questions, of course, comes up. So what do we do with our little ones who need to stay home if we're only coming to school 2 days a week? We obviously have some children and some families who will need childcare. So in that survey that Dr. Meyer mentioned, we'll be asking about childcare needs as well. Currently, all of our elementary schools are served by some kind of before and after school program to provide childcare for our families who need it either early or later in the day. So what we are going to do then is ask an internal coordinator, and that will be Dr. Graham, to identify our childcare partners that we're currently using, take a look at our survey information, and work to expand our current school-based childcare programs. For our employees, elementary age students of employees will be allowed to attend school each day. We need to be able to have our teachers at school, for example, in order to teach. So their children will be able to attend school each day as other employees. So again, as you can see here, the Family First Coronavirus Act requires paid leave at 3/4 for up to 10 weeks. So this would impact our ability to educate our students. So again, Dr. Graham will be analyzing our survey information, working to find out who might need childcare.
So what's going to happen too, Dr. Graham, who is on a RIHIP program, she's going to use her RIHIP days to actually help us out with this, which is great. What we would do, for instance, is we do not have enough space in the elementary schools where most of these programs exist. Okay. Like during the summer, there are programs in our schools for daycare, for summer care, and that kind of thing. So what we're going to do is look at moving the daycare programs to the middle and the high schools because there's plenty of space, and you'll see why there's plenty of space when we get to the middle and high school plans. Okay.
So what about the cost?
There will be a cost involved to families, just like it would be summer care. We're going to try to minimize it, and we're going to try to also create consistency with, you know, we have some of our own programs, and Adventure Club also has some programs. So we're talking to them. And so we're going to try to create some consistency in that, and then create some, hopefully the cost will be affordable.
In the survey that Dr. Meyer mentioned, we are asking, in addition to childcare needs, we're asking about those families who will need to keep their children at home. Perhaps there's someone at home with a medical condition. And for those reasons, we're working to provide that video conferencing option so that parents and families can listen in on what's going on in the classroom in case they can't be, or there may be times that they can't send their children to school, to be able to support them at home through video conferencing is what we're looking at.
I just don't understand how we're going to be expecting children to be sitting all day long in front of a device.
Well, we're not. That's part of the, planning as well. Of course, elementary kids, half will be in the school and half will be at home. We're not going to expect the students to sit there at home all day looking at their computer and looking at what their kid is, what their teacher is doing in class. What we're going to end up doing is bringing our elementary teachers in and let them decide, how that's going to look, how that's going to work. And, obviously teachers know you can't sit there, have kids at home on a computer all day. There'll probably be parts of the day that we'll ask them to be online to participate in classroom activities, but we're not going to ask them to be on there from 9 to 4, by no means. But I'm going to let teachers decide what that looks like. Elementary teachers, I'm going to let them decide what that looks like on the other end, on the virtual end for their students. And I don't know what they'll decide. They might say, okay, an hour a day, we need to get the other half to log on. They might say 2 or 3 hours a day. I don't know. We're going to let teachers make that decision of those students.
Well, I would say that having some kind of organized, being able to be online will be a help to the parents, because I know there's a lot of parents that just don't know what to do at this point.
Right.
Because they're not used to being a teacher. They didn't go into that profession. And, for somebody to demand these kinds of things, I think is crazy anyway, but, we don't have a choice.
Right.
So.
And going back, our next steps, we got a lot to go over, but we're going to bring in grade level, a rep from every school, like a rep from every school that teaches 5th grade. And they're going to come in probably in the next several weeks and have the discussion. What does 5th grade look like, in class versus those that are at home? And it's going to look different between 2nd grade and 5th grade, what it's going to look like on the virtual end. And so the teachers will make that decision, basically what it looks like. And they'll be corresponding with their teams back at the school and having a couple of meetings and we'll go from there. So.
Okay, so I'm not convinced that this will be equitable.
What equity issues are you worried about, Ms. Franklin?
Is how students who are not in a classroom are going to be able to get the support that they need, because there are parents who have to go to work and those kids are going to be left.
Sure. So what will happen is this: for one, our special education department is going to be looking child by child and probably having to reconvene IEP meetings with every child with an IEP. If a kid with an IEP needs services every day, they will be brought in. The same for ELL kids. If they need services every day, they will be brought in. Then students who do not have access to cellular service, cellular meaning the MiFis that we will issue out do not work, they will definitely be brought in as well. And then it's going to be a case-by-case basis on kids who might need to be brought in because they're not getting it. We're going to create equity the best that we can. Is it as good as school every day? Absolutely not. But our hands have been tied by the restrictions, and that's what we're looking at. So we are addressing equity in many different areas, many different ways.
So I'm not questioning what you're trying to put together. I'm questioning the guidelines that you're having to work under, because how are we supposed to create equity, which they're pushing and should be, And I just don't see how that happens. I do not.
We're going to do the best we can to address every kid the best.
And I'm sure we will, but don't, it's like one of those unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to say that they
be
should
equitable.
be putting the strict guidelines
Don't
in place
do this, can't
when
do
they
that.
know schools can't do it. I mean, it's just crazy
Yeah.
to expect these kinds of things.
Well, here's the thing. We're going to do something. We're going to do the best we can. Our teachers are going to do the best they can. I think that's the attitude to have about all of this.
But you shouldn't have to.
Well,
we shouldn't have to.
Yeah. And so we're going to do the best we can in circumstances that have been given to us. And our folks are going to work hard to do the best we can for our kids.
We can have a great positive attitude and we're trying to do the best we can. But the reality is we're not going to be serving students the way we need to be serving students. Plain and simple. So we can smile and be cheerful and let's go. We're going to get it done. But in the end, it's not going to work for all students. A large portion of students.
I understand too. I think we have to keep our students safe too. I think we are in the pandemic and there are risks that are involved, in bringing kids in and exposing them. We really need to figure out, we need to move through this presentation too. All right.
I was just going to say all these under the circumstances, we can even move phase 3. Because if we can't move phase 3, we won't be able to do any of those and to begin with. So hopefully things will get a little better to move on.
I think what's going to happen too is with Virginia Tech students coming back into the area, really leaves us in a place where we don't know what's going to happen. We've lived a relatively quiet summer and spring with no students around to transmit anything, but I don't know what's going to come when fall comes.
Yeah,
and Penny, I hear what you're saying, and Jane, I totally agree. I think we all agree this really stinks, but is there another option other than trying to come up with something that works? Do we have any other option? We can't change the governor's mind.
That's the problem.
I know, and so unless you know a secret way to change his mind, do we have a choice?
The land of the mandates, trust me.
I understand that he is trying to do things that are going to keep our children safe, keep our families safe. But there's a piece of this that is missing. What is going to happen with those children who are not going to have the capability to be able to engage the way they need to engage? The families who won't have the support to make sure that their children are being cared for. There's some other social things that need to be happening to help support families during this time while we're going through this.
But are we not providing the option, Dr. Meyer, that if a family needs their child to go to school, that they go to school?
We got to be careful with that. What is the decision of that need? We're gonna have to look at case by case basis in terms of that. So, Yep.
I think everybody's making excellent points. I know one of the questions that our teachers had today at our advisory committee meeting is that they recognize that they'll be repeating the same lesson 2 days. So you'll do 2 lessons and then you'll repeat that lesson for the very things that you're talking about, and not all children being able to have the support they need at home. One of the questions that we've gotten is, if we had the transportation, could we bring all of our children in? And the issue with that is that we still have to maintain social distance in the classroom. So half is the most we can do at this time based on these guidelines that we've been given.
Okay, Brenda, could you go to the next slide, please? Is this Carl? Mr. Paul?
I believe that's me. It's time to talk about secondary, but we decided we would start with this as a repeat slide from something that Dr. Wickham put up. Same process for gaining input and feedback from different stakeholder groups. We've done various surveys starting back in April 15th, and then on to the teachers in May. And Dr. Wickham and I have both had advisory committee meetings, both on May 26th and this morning and this afternoon. And then in between there, we've met with leadership teams and principal meetings and teachers, and it's been a lot. And so the plan that we've come up with has had a lot of input from a lot of folks. And Brenda, if you go to the next slide. These are sort of the points to be made about the schedule that we have planned for secondary. This is a schedule that allows us to open schools on time with a combination of remote learning and face-to-face instruction, but following those guidelines. And I have been listening to everyone's comments about the guidelines. They are the guidelines and parameters that we've been given. And so we're doing the best we can with those. And the best that we believe we can do is to do a combination of remote and face-to-face. We could certainly have just said it's too difficult and just go all remote. And some school divisions, I believe, are looking into that. But that is not something that we got from our stakeholder groups. The most strong point over and over again is please let us bring kids in, have kids and teachers make at least some contact, some check-in through some type of flexible scheduling. And that's the second bullet, that to develop a flexible schedule that allows at least some time for teachers and students to touch base in person. Other classes, while the touching base in person is going on, will meet remotely with synchronous instruction. And by synchronous, I mean that it goes on at the exact same time or live for the kids who are not at school in the school building. So the students who are at home will be right in step with the students who are getting the lesson face-to-face or the instruction face-to-face in person. Also, we built into the secondary schedule some time for students to be in the classroom where they could utilize the resources within the building. One of those resources being our internet services. They would have access to our internet services and other resources in the building. They could go perhaps to the library, to another teacher to get assistance from the teacher. Just really some unstructured time is built into the schedule, as you will see in just a few moments, for students to do work in the school building with the support of school personnel and resources. Next slide, Brenda. We've talked a bit already about differentiated access. We don't have that plan completely fleshed out, but we do believe that we're going to have to give different access to different groups of students, students with disabilities, English learners, students who need intervention, and students who have no home cellular access. We need to provide for those students. This plan presumes that it's just a group of students who are able to do a combination of remote and in-person learning, but we certainly are recognizing there are other groups of students who have different needs. Same options that Dr. Wickham brought out and that Mr. Krantz talked about. We have the same options based on transportation. Option one is to bring in 25% of secondary students at a time. And the other would be with mitigation, we would be able to bring in 50% of middle school and high school students in at one time. Certainly the better of the two options is option two, to bring in half of them. That allows us to bring more students in, but also more importantly, more often. And you'll see that in just a little bit. Whatever we do have to remain cognizant of the fact that when we open, whether it's with restrictions or ultimately without restrictions, at a given time, we might be having to go back to remote learning, and we need to be prepared to do that. Next slide, Brenda. Okay, so I'll start with perhaps the easiest one to explain, but I don't want to imply that it's easy to explain. It is just the easier of the different schedules. You know that we have 4 high schools, and among those 4 high schools, we have 3 rather different schedules. We don't have any of our high schools on one schedule, and that is extra problematic under these current circumstances. So the easiest one is Eastern Montgomery High School. They have a straight 4x4 block, which just to remind you, a 4x4 block means that all students attend 4 classes, block 1, 2, 3, and 4 every day. Under normal circumstances, they attend those for 90 minutes a day, every day. and then they are finished with those courses after semester 1, and then they start brand new courses in semester 2 and go 90 minutes a day every day for each block. What we're proposing here is to bring in groups of students for block 1 on Monday, the same group of students, or another group of students on Tuesdays for block 2, and on Thursday for block 3, and Friday for block 4. You could call that group A if you'd like. Maybe it makes it easier to explain. So student group A would come into the building on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for their block 1, 2, 3, and 4 class. One block each day for those 4 days. When they go home, they would continue on a schedule with their blocks 2, 3, and 4 classes on Monday, 1, 3, and 4 on Tuesday, and then so on down the line for Thursday and Friday. So if you read from left to right, on Monday, every student gets block 1, 2, 3, and 4. On Tuesday, 2, 1, 3, 4, and on Thursday, 3, 1, 2, 4, and so on. So what's not shown here, but will be shown later in the detail, is that while block 1 instruction is going on in person for that group, call it group A, the other students who are at home, whether that be 50% of the school or 25% of the school, those students who are at home are remoting in, if you will. It is synchronous instruction. They will be sitting at home following the same instruction that the block 1 students in the building are following. When those students get back home, then blocks 2, 3, and 4 will continue remotely for everyone. The little chart on the right just shows why it is that we favor option 2. With option 1, group A would have to follow this schedule, and then the following week, group B would have to follow it, the following week, group C, and the following week, group D, and then start over again. So group A would meet every day, but then it would be 3 weeks would pass before they would get back in the building. But if we can bring in 50% of the kids, then students are going to go to the building every other week. That is much better. So group A would go Monday through Friday, and then the following week, they wouldn't come in. The other group comes in. So it is a much better situation if we could do 50% and bring in students on alternating weeks. I almost think I should pause here for questions because the next ones are far more complicated. And if you understand this one, it's easier to understand the others. Okay, no questions. Then we're going to move on to Auburn High School and Christiansburg High School on the next slide. It's going to look very much more complicated because it is. Auburn High School and Christiansburg High School have what we call a hybrid block schedule, where they have the semester block classes like I described earlier, but they are only blocks 2, 3, and 4 in the middle of the day. On either end of the day, the beginning, period 1, and the end of the day, period 5, those are 45-minute periods that normally meet 45 minutes every day for 180 days. They don't switch at the semester. They meet every single day, 5 minutes. So in building a schedule like this, we had to ensure that the semester block courses meet twice as often as those period courses. So I'll say that again. We had to build a schedule where the semester block courses meet twice as often relative to the period 1 and 5 courses. So that puts Auburn and Christiansburg on a 2-week cycle, which means, and I'm going to go with my favorite option of having just 2 groups, 50% and 50%. So the first half of the students would go through a 2-week cycle, period 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, and the following week, period 5, block 2, block 3, block 4. Then group B would come in. The other half of the kids would come in for the next 2 weeks. And they would just keep on that cycle. 2 weeks in the building, then the other half comes in 2 weeks in the building. And they just keep going back and forth. All the while, there is remote learning going on in the other courses on a rotating schedule at home, which I will show you a typical day's schedule here in just a moment.
Carl, could I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just trying to, I mean, this is a lot. Have we
Mhm.
have we considered how to better utilize some of the space? Like I'm thinking, okay, I'm on a high school. I've got a big gymnasium. I've got an auditorium. I've got auxiliary gymnasium. How we could take, I mean, maybe it's we don't have gym, but how we could use those spaces to create extra classrooms so that we could have more students.
Yes, I think I can answer that. At some school, we have different capacity in different schools. Eastern Montgomery High School and Auburn High School, for example, they have enough classroom space. The classroom space is definitely not an issue. But take Christiansburg High School, they have some classrooms that are quite small. They are not, the average is somewhere around 800 square feet, but Christiansburg High School has several classrooms that are much smaller than that. So what you've suggested is a possibility at those schools that need space, like basically you're saying converting space to classrooms. Yes?
So we have considered it and it just is,
If
I
you
don't
don't
think
mind,
we're at that. I don't think we're at that point yet.
excuse me?
I just don't think we're at that point of planning yet. I think that it is definitely something to consider, and we have talked about the idea that we may have to do that.
All right,
I think we are at that. I think we're at that point because right now what we're talking about is sending kids to school for a maximum of 2 days a week. And I think we are at the point to consider any available space we can utilize in our schools or even in the community that allow us to have students going to school more than 2 days a week or
So, Mr. Pauly, I think Ms. Cass, excuse me, I think y'all are confused about what's being asked.
Okay.
All right, because Carl, I think you're thinking that you would move the classroom to that space. Ms. Cass is basically saying bring more kids in.
Oh.
Yeah. So do you have the slide about the considerations in here? Or you at least talk about all the considerations and why you can't do stuff like that?
I don't have those slides in,
Right,
in
that's okay.
the presentation.
Well, we can go ahead and finish the Blacksburg schedule, then go back through why you can't bring kids in spaces.
You mean like why they can't progress through a schedule?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right, I will do that. I'm going to move to Blacksburg High School schedule. That is the third type of schedule that we have in Montgomery County, and they are on an A-B block, or sometimes known as the alternating day block. So they have all of their classes meet year long. They just have they have a set of classes that meet on an A day and another set of classes that meet on a B day. So they have, for example, on Monday, they would have blocks 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. And on Tuesday, 1B, 2B, 3B, 4B. And that just keeps flipping back and forth all year long under normal circumstances. So with that school, in order to have the courses meet with the correct amount of instructional time, they would have to be on an 8-day cycle. So again, it works better if it's 50-50. So 50% of the student body was able to attend in the first 2-week cycle. The students would attend block 1A on Monday, 1B on Tuesday, 2A on Thursday, 2B on Friday, 3A on Monday the following week, 3B on Tuesday the following week, 4A Thursday, and 4B on Friday. So by the time they finished the 2-week cycle, every single each student in that group would have seen every single one of their teachers. Then if you read it from left to right, it shows how we would combine the in-person instruction with remote learning that continues at home. And that way they see their A-day teachers on Monday, their B-day teachers on Tuesday, and then A on Thursday, B on Friday, and it keeps following that pattern. So they receive instruction on a schedule in all 4A classes and in all 4B classes on an alternating day pattern. But they do have to go, each group would have to go through an entire 8-day cycle before the next group can go. That's why if you put them, if you cut your student body into quarters, 25% groups, that puts a lot of time in between. So group A would have to wait until B, C, and D went before they could come back. But if we're in 50-50, you're able to show, you're able to have them come in every other 2-week period.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Next slide.
I was just gonna say, I have a question. Going
Back on
back
the other
to what Miss Cass was saying, and I understand you're going to show that in a little bit, but it just while it's on my mind. The smaller schools that might have the room, is that an impossibility? I mean, is there playing off of?
Yeah, I understand. The issue is you don't have teachers. I mean, you can bring.
Well,
Capacity to get them there.
You don't
That's
have.
kind of not where I'm even going with that. I'm just kind of saying if you have a larger class that say you could put it in the gym at 6 foot distancing with one teacher in the same class, just move that class to that area. Then a smaller class that say at Shawsville, I know there's some classes or Eastern Elementary that only have 12 and 15 students in them, and they could be in a smaller classroom.
You've got classrooms like in the middle school where you can take walls down and create larger classrooms.
Right,
but that might not be feasible for. I'm talking about the smaller.
The first thing you have to go back to is what we talked about first, and the reason we talked about it first: transportation. We can't get any more kids than that there. Yeah.
But what about if you could get? Just say, for an example, you could get commitments from people to get their students at those.
All right.
I understand Eastern Montgomery Elementary, that's not a possibility. Auburn Elementary, it's not a possibility.
Right. So that's a question we're going to get is if I can bring my kid, why can't I bring them more?
Right.
The number one thing, I go back to Ms. Franklin's comment, the number one thing that we have to be aware of is equity. We can't allow kids who have transportation to be allowed to come to school more than those who do not have transportation.
Right, and I understand that as well, but that's the same equity piece for those kids that have two working parents that might not fall into certain categories, but they still, they're not going to have that same opportunity. I mean,
we're talking about education equity, and being able to come.
Right, I understand. That's what I'm saying. But if you've got two parents that aren't going to be home all day, I don't care what situation you're in, those kids are going to suffer.
Yeah,
That's what I said. Yeah.
Same.
That's true. We can't allow kids to come to school and come and have access just because their parents can drive them every day.
Right. I mean, I hear what you're saying. It was just an idea.
Okay. No, keep bringing them at us. We've had a lot of thinking and a lot has gone into this in terms of what's the considerations that have been made. So we're welcome to anybody who's listening to feel free to contact Mr. Pauly if you think you have ideas. But I challenge you to think of some that we haven't thought of because it's.
Yeah, I think I understand Ms. Cass's question much better now. I'm sorry I misunderstood it. And what Dr. Meyer said is absolutely correct. So if we created more space to bring in more children, then we wouldn't have the teachers to cover those classes. Isn't that
what I'm saying is like, I'm just thinking now just about one school, but like you have Blacksburg Middle School where it has removable walls between classrooms. So you could create bigger classrooms so you could spread students out more. And maybe it might mean teachers have to rotate around different classrooms. I'm just trying to think outside the box of what we're looking at right now. But I think that, and I know not all schools have those kinds of removable walls, but some of the newer ones do. And I'm just trying to think of ways that we could utilize all the spaces we have, maybe find other locations that rec centers, whatever, that might have some space that we could use. I just would like to see us try to come up with options that allow.
Well, it goes back to, we will not be able to transport that many kids to school.
Yeah.
I mean, we're at the max now of how many basically we're putting half of a class in there right now. So say we use the 50% model. So 50% model is about, it's going to be 10 to 15 students, it depends on, what class it is. So we're averaging probably 10 to 15 students that will actually come in and be in a classroom for a day. Our classrooms are about 800 square feet. You got to keep kids 6 feet apart. So I guess that's about 36 square feet each kid will need. And so, and then the actual transportation in, we won't be able to get more than that in on a bus anyway. When we're stretching it now by doing the mitigation option with the 26. And so
Right. Then you also have to worry about the cafeteria and hallways.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, do we have
Understand.
to
And
worry?
like I said,
Do we
when
need
I
the
made that
cafeteria?
comment,
Sorry, Jamie. Go ahead.
so I was just gonna say that, and I understand you're exactly right, Marty. I wasn't even thinking those, but I was thinking in just this few schools that we had smaller attendance, and we do have certain schools that those would at least be a few that could come off of the category that you wouldn't have to figure out so many different things. But understand.
We're going to
Got it.
fill classrooms up more than you think. Besides these half, when you start including special education, ELL, it's going to be more than 50% that come every day. That makes
Dr.
sense.
Meyer, are we required to, we wouldn't be required to provide lunch to, if they're only doing 3 hours, lunch isn't required, correct?
No, but we do have a lunch plan. I don't know if we talked about this in our PowerPoint. Basically, our lunch plan is this. We're going to continue to deliver lunches to students in the morning when, if a student is at their bus stop in the morning and they're not assigned to go to school that day, they can still receive a lunch, a breakfast and a lunch.
Great.
Good, good.
And two, the aides, we're going to put the same aides on these buses to help us with between the mask and the lunch and breakfast lunch delivery, because going to a 4-day week, it will actually have the hours for the aides to be able to actually do that, because they would not have to work on a Wednesday, the aides and bus drivers. All right, the middle school schedule, Mr. Pauly.
The middle school schedule is very similar to the Blacksburg High School AB schedule in that it is also an 8-day schedule, because middle schools have 8-period days, 7 periods of content and 1 IE period. And so it rolls through a 2-week cycle as well, so that students are able to see each and every one of their teachers and still have the IE time. So on Monday, Group A goes to period 1, then they go to period 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 IE, and then the next group comes in for the next 2-week cycle. And then if you read it from left to right, students on Monday who are in person for period 1, when they get home, they will join their classmate remotely in periods 3, 5, and 7.
Mr. Paul, explain why they can only come for 1 period.
Okie doke. So go ahead to the next slide, Brenda, and I'll explain that.
Oh, good job.
I asked Brenda to pop those in there.
Okay.
You can see that the title is from today's Secondary Advisory Committee meeting, and they seem to understand this graphic. So I'll give it another shot, see if I can do it justice again. So our first idea really was to bring students in and keep them for maybe 2 periods, right? And let them go to first period and then go to second period and go home. And then the next day do periods 3 and 4 and then go home, and so on in like kind. So there's a problem with that. So if you think about in period 1, you've got 4 teachers, teacher A, B, C, and D, okay? And teacher A has a class normally of 16. And so she's going to get a quarter of them. This was, by the way, on the quarter model. She gets a quarter of them. That would be 4. Teacher B normally has 20 kids. She's getting 5. Teacher C normally has 24. He's getting 6. Teacher D normally has 28. He's getting 7. So you would like to think then that when you now dismiss them to go to period 2, it would be wonderful if all 4 kids from period 1, teacher A, went to the same teacher the next period. And likewise with teacher B going to the same teacher, and the kids from teacher C going to the same teacher. But in reality, Brenda, if you would click the next slide, it looks more like this, right? So you could have those 4 kids in period 1 and the 5 kids, for teacher A, and the 5 kids for teacher B, and the 6 kids from teacher C all might have the same period 2 teacher, teacher E. And so now those 4, those 5, and those 6, they're all going to their second period class, and now they happen to be in the same second period class, and there's 15 of them in there. Meanwhile, teacher F doesn't have any of those kids because they have them from a different 25% group that hasn't come in yet. So that teacher doesn't have any kids. And then teacher D in period 1, maybe 6 of those 7 go to teacher G. Only 1 of those 7 goes to teacher H. So if you click to the next slide, Brenda, those are super simple, small numbers to demonstrate. If you can just expand that thinking to constantly remixing students every time they go to a different teacher through an entire schedule, periods 3 through 7, like you can just imagine, we can't identify groups of kids who transition from the same group of kids go from teacher A to teacher E, and from teacher B to teacher F, and from C to teacher G.
Be a nightmare.
It doesn't work that way.
And it could be really nightmare identifying if there is a virus situation in one group too, because they will be all mixed in and you wouldn't know where it comes from.
Well, that's true. I guess if you look at that as like a pandemic a virus vector,
Yeah.
it's not very good.
Yeah, that's a point too. If we are trying to separate them or follow,
Trace.
yeah,
Trace
that's
them.
the word. Thank you.
Yeah, right. So I hope that makes sense. Like I
does.
just love with the idea of kids coming in for 2 periods, and I tried and worked with other folks who were convincing me it can't be done, it can't be done. And finally I had to give up. I had to see it. I had to say, okay, I see what's in front of you. It won't work. Because in secondary schools, you remix kids. Now, you might say in middle school, it's a little bit different because at least the kids in period 1, they're on the same team, right? So why couldn't you just do like Miss Cassie even suggested and have the teachers rotate to the group within the team? But I tried that one too. And where that gets messed up is when they spread out to electives, because they all have different periods for CTE,
Right.
Yeah.
PE, world language, fine arts, band, you name it. Like they're spreading to the wind at all different times.
You know, there is.
Well,
There
what
is-
about, I mean, this is really going outside the box, and probably nobody beat me up for this idea, please. But we're trying to recreate school exactly the way it is right now. And these are not normal times. Is there a way to kind of relook, especially at the middle school and high school level, where you've got all these different classes everybody's taking? Is there a way to rethink just for the time period of how we can maybe make the schedules less complicated so they're still getting the core education?
Yeah.
But it's,
Well, you know,
they're
that's a
getting
good
more
question.
time, because otherwise it's like everybody's spread so thin, they're getting so little in every single subject that,
Right.
is there a way to maybe rethink that?
And so, you know, that's a good question. Let me tell you why, because we considered that, and it's something that could be reconsidered. But the way to make it simple is to go to a 4x4 block like Eastmont High School has, and all the secondary schools do that. That's the way to make it simple. However, what you're going to get into is some of these year-long courses, and some of our students who take AP classes, they want it year-long. And so what would happen is if we go back to full time by second semester, and I don't know if that's a possibility or not, then you're going to have sort of that gap. You're going to have a situation where they will not have the ability to take an AP course the entire year up to prior to the AP exam. But, you know, the easiest way to do it is that's why Mr. Pauly said, hey, this is the easiest schedule to understand is the Eastmont High School schedule, because it's a block schedule. And it's pretty simple, you know, and, you know, that could be done at every school. Now, I will say this, our kids have already been scheduled for this coming year. You got to realize that too.
Yeah.
we would have to go back and reschedule every kid. But what we have done is this: we've created a system that is fluid. In case we end up going back to school with everyone, it will be easy to just pop back, get back into school, or if we go to back to phase 3, back to phase 2 or 1, and then we've created sort of a fluid situation. But the easiest would always be just to do the block system, but that's not. I don't think that's what our teachers would want.
Well, I don't know how much. Well, that would be probably getting their opinion on all of this, which would be really helpful. Core class. There's core classes. I know in the high school level you've got AP. Plus, what's happening with AP classes at this point? I don't even know. But core classes, like in the middle school level, I love electives. I love that kids get to do electives. I think they're awesome. I think it's a great break for kids, but we're not going, these are not normal times right now.
Yeah, but I'm going to say, I look at our elective courses as just as important as our core courses.
I do too.
I think they're extremely important, but
I think just as important personally, but
then I guess, I don't know. I guess you'd have to balance and find out what's more important. Kids being in school, parents, I don't know who, I think, like I said, I didn't say it's a popular view, but I just think it's worth considering because what I'm hearing, and I think parents are saying right now, that they are very worried about kids not being in school. And so anything we can do, and
I agree with that.
in an equitable way.
Here's the thing, we can't.
I was
Go
going to
ahead,
say, but
Jane.
we have had that conversation about all high schools being on the same 4x4 scheduling. You wouldn't believe the fuss and fight that we got from some of the districts on that.
Well, I know,
Blacksburg
Jamie,
being the biggest one. But, my concern is career in tech as far as we're consistently talking and constantly talking about, has the governor's office given any kind of guidance on how clinical stuff is taken care of in those classes? I mean, it's much easier to remote academics, but when you're getting ready to turn a cosmetologist out to cut hair and they can't do that,
which we can't do there
in the lab, that's a big difference. Has he given any kind of guidance on that kind of thing?
No, he has not, and we'll be looking for that guidance. It goes back to, regardless of what we do, doing more than one period a day, with transportation being the biggest issue, is our biggest obstacle. This chart here says it all. I think once you go beyond one period, you start mixing kids up.
Right, I understand that, and you can't do this so much. I get that, but
right.
Again,
Mr. Pauly, I like to show with the if you go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, I asked Brenda to add this next slide too, just real quick. I did want you to know that, and I shared this with the committee today. These are all the things that kept me up nights these past 2 weeks. I've looked at trying to bring kids in all day, bring them in half day, having a morning session, an afternoon session. I loved that idea. Wished I could have made that work. Tried to bring kids in by teacher, by subject, by period or block, which is the one you just saw. That's ultimately the one that worked. Tried to bring them in by content area, like have a science day and a math day and an English day. Tried to bring them in by location in the building, like zone the building and bring kids in based on where the location of classrooms are for different things. And I even looked at, like, could we bring them in by like zoning communities and neighborhoods and bring them in by bus stops? And that did not work either. So trying to think out of the box, like I appreciate that, like, the comment was made, I think it was Ms. Cass, like, how about thinking about not doing things like the normal way? And I had that thought in my head for a long time and tried all those different things you see there. Like, maybe I should look at it a different way. And I tried every different way. I had favorite ones and then they didn't work. So we wound up with the best and only one that I could think of, and the team that I worked with could think of.
I think it's also important to keep it as similar as what we have, so that if we go to normal, you don't want to take time to reshuffle everything. So I think that is an important point, to keep it as normal as possible, what we are doing now, or we used to do, so that if we go normal, then it will be smooth transition instead of rescheduling everybody's classes. Otherwise, we have to go with the same way we choose now all year long, because otherwise it will be awfully hard by January to reshuffle everything if we can go to normal.
All right.
Okay, so I believe at some point we need to go to raising our hands or whatever, so we're not talking over each other and everybody gets the opportunity to speak. Because as far as the electives, there are some children, the only reason that they can function in school is because they have those electives, and the only reason they want to come to school. It's important to try to keep that piece normal too. But again, I agree with everything you're saying. You're trying to do the best you can with the guidelines that you have, but the piece about what's going to happen in community as far as the equity piece and the child care piece and how that's going to be affordable for all of our families, that's going to be huge. There are already trends showing that the issues around abuse and neglect are going up because of the situation that we're in, either because we're together too much. And now when we start pulling kids in and out and parents still have to go to work, that's a piece that needs to be looked at. We're supposed to be educating the kids. We're trying to do that the best we can, but somebody needs to be paying attention to the other part of this. What is going to be happening with those children at home, and how are they going to be educated equitably? And how are the parents going to be able to afford that? And when they can't, it's going to be some bad situations. So the governor better be paying attention.
I agree.
And somebody better be talking about that and how we deal with that.
Exactly. Dr. Meyer, he probably has not stated this, I'm sure, but you know, since this whole thing has started, the districts around Virginia have all been different according to who had it more cases, where they're worse. I think I can speak fairly reasonably when I say I don't think that our county is one that has been affected in a way that a lot of other areas in the state has. So what I'm trying to understand from our governor is one size doesn't fit all. And I can see him putting these mandates in place if it was a highly affected area and we still had issues going on. However, you know, it would seem to me like I can see him putting some guidelines in place for us. However, it would be nice if he would give you and, you know, the school board some opportunity for some input and let us choose how we would like to proceed with when we're going to start and how we're going to start. I don't know if that's ever been questioned to him about why he's not giving us more of an opportunity to have a say in it. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that's been addressed by the state superintendent some, but you know, there are a couple. I think Richmond and Fairfax, they're still in stage one or phase one and going to phase two by Friday. So there's some differentiation in the state as to what phases they're in. And there's some folks that are having a push for, you know, Southwest Virginia that doesn't have many cases at all.
Exactly.
Especially if you go further southwest.
Exactly.
So that's something that he's definitely heard that. There's no doubt about that. But I haven't seen where there's been any relaxation on allowing us to do more what we want to do.
Okay. Everybody contact their delegates.
Absolutely.
That's true. And of course, my worry is Radford and Virginia Tech coming back and how that's going to affect our numbers then. I mean, we've been, you know, lucky with they were away from spring break, then they send away. So we really didn't see them around as much between when we closed and now. So, I mean, hopefully, of course, I mean, my fingers crossed that they don't bring anything now that they're all coming back.
But then they come and go over the weekends. So just, breaking it at Thanksgiving break and hoping they don't, and doing fully online after that doesn't really prevent a whole lot if they're going back and forth on the weekends.
That is
Right.
true. That is true.
So the next slide, Mr. Pauly, sort of explains what does that one period look like for a middle and high
Yes.
school student?
So this slide breaks out what a singular day in secondary would look like. It could be a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday. Doesn't matter. This is the schedule. So students arrive kind of normal time, and then they go to their assigned class, and they remain there from 8 to 10. And then an important point is, while the teacher is providing instruction to this group of students face-to-face in person, if you look beneath that, the other half of the kids who are at home are receiving remote synchronous instruction, like in real time. So unlike what Dr. Whitcomb said about elementary, the teacher does not reteach that lesson several times. While the lesson is being taught to the 50% of the students in the building, the other 50% are at home, and it's live synchronous instruction. Then from 10 to 11, I'm sorry, is there a question?
I'm just saying, and who is monitoring that to make sure that those children are at home doing the lessons, listening to what's going on in the classroom?
But they are, yes, Penny, they are going to be held accountable to attend class. I mean, roll will be taken whether in the building or out of the building. Teachers will hold students accountable for being in class even when they're at home.
Those students will remain with that teacher from 10 to 11, but that will be a bit more unstructured time. This will be a time for them to work on assignments while having the resources of the school and the school building, including the internet capacity of the building, the library, and even the ability to access other teachers for assistance if those teachers are available. You would imagine a teacher, a student saying to their teacher, I really need some help with my math work, and I'm not going to see my math teacher in person for another week. That teacher during this hour 10 to 11 would call that teacher to see if there was the capacity to have another student join that classroom during that time and go get a little extra help. So this would take careful coordination within the school and some strict guidelines and expectations for how students move so they're not interacting in the halls. But this is a time for intervention to take place and for students to work using school resources. Then the students are dismissed. They pick up their lunch, they grab and go the lunch, they get on the bus, they go home. And then once they're home, then they rejoin the other half of their classmates, and everyone follows a schedule of 3 more classes of 45 minutes apiece.
Then again, to let you know, that afternoon, students that are in need because of IEPs and students with disabilities and English language learners will be allowed to stay and be in front of the teacher, because a lot of them do have one-to-one aides in the afternoon and actually be at school.
Correct. And then I believe it was already explained that on Wednesdays, the reasons we would be closed on Wednesdays is for deep cleaning of the building and teacher planning, professional development or training, and faculty meetings. This was a point of discussion in the Secondary Advisory Committee today, what the teachers would be doing during that time, and the teachers on the committee spoke to that very eloquently and convincingly to the rest of the group, that they need that time, that we educators have been trained to be in-person teachers, not remote teachers, and they need to retool. They need to modify lesson plans. They need to figure things out, ways to do things differently. They need extra planning time. They need extra training. And the students also, I think someone mentioned earlier, one of the board members mentioned earlier, that it's difficult for students to sit in front of a computer all day, every day. It does give the students a day break from being on the computer all day. with remote learning. So they are at home working on their assignments. It's kind of like a teacher work day and a student work day every Wednesday.
Okay, Brenda.
So we're back to this slide that on the left shows all of the input meetings and feedback meetings and collaboration that we've had, but also simultaneously this past week or so, we have had another group of folks working diligently on planning for a virtual school. And we have met with the Eastmont and Shawsville Middle principals as well as the faculty. Dr. Meyer held a faculty meeting with all of the teachers there. And I have created a FAQ doc for teachers as of yesterday. And I see that questions have been popping in there, and I will be answering those, checking that doc and answering those periodically. So let me show you what our plans look like for a virtual school. Next slide, please. So first I want to start with the reason for coming up with a virtual school option, even after this pandemic passes us, when the pandemic is just in the history books and we're back to being fully reopened. We will still have some students, or initially when we reopen, we will still have some families whose parents don't want to send them to school out of fear or just extra caution. And we're going to have some students who absolutely need to stay home. They have a medical reason to stay home. And then this came about from the teacher survey back in, I believe it was May. Very interesting, got feedback from teachers, quite a bit of feedback from teachers, that even they were surprised to find that some students who normally were very quiet and shy and didn't participate much, and that they didn't really get to interact with much in a normal school setting, all of a sudden came to life in a remote setting. Some students were not only successful, but thrived in a remote learning environment, and much to the teacher's surprise. We also have another interesting group of folks. We have had some homeschooled students who were interested in joining us while we are doing remote learning. But once we go back to traditional school, they're not going to want to maybe send their kids to a brick and mortar school. And we want to keep them. We'd like to keep them with us and keep educating those students and providing opportunities for them. Again, we also want to have an option for students to be in remote learning to meet all of these needs. So here's what it will look like. Next slide. Brenda, thank you. So the Elementary Advisory Committee really hasn't fleshed theirs out yet. This is kind of new thinking for elementary, but just want to let you know that that committee will continue to work on what, if any, virtual option continuing on for elementary can continue. But speaking about middle and high school, what we would do is designate a middle school and a high school as the MCPS virtual schools. So we would select a middle school and a high school that would be a best fit to be our virtual schools, even when the pandemic and the closure is over. We would need to select strategies for remote learning. We would envision synchronous, asynchronous, and a combination thereof. So we would anticipate our virtual school being a combination of both types of remote learning that we've now learned about. We know this would require training for teachers, students, and parents. We know we need to establish clear expectations, and we also know it's going to require additional IT support for those schools that we would designate. So the next slide is our actual proposal for what the virtual school would look like. We envision a MCPS virtual school program having two parts. One is utilizing a resource that's actually been around for a very long time, Virtual Virginia. Virtual Virginia began many, many years ago to provide students in rural schools and small schools, to provide them with opportunities to take courses that their school couldn't offer. And so a student in a school division where they couldn't offer AP chemistry could take that course then online through Virtual Virginia. It was also put in place to help students with schedule change problems, where the example I used with the parent group today was, in a small school, you often have what's called singletons, courses that are offered only one and only period all day long, all year long. And so let's say you're a student who wants AP chemistry and band. And unfortunately for you, band and AP chemistry land in the same period for the school year. You can't take both. Virtual Virginia can step in and allow that student to take AP chemistry in Virtual Virginia and then be able to take band at their school. So that's what Virtual Virginia was created for many years ago. But a couple of years ago, they introduced their full-time Virtual Virginia program, which our school board policies have said that we initially did not want to participate in. But now we're reconsidering. What this allows is for students to go to a school where they live, enroll in that school, and then take every single course all year, each year for 4 years, take it all virtual through Virtual Virginia, meet graduation requirements, and then get a diploma from the school through which they enrolled. So that option's been around for a couple of years, and we are considering now that would be a good option for some of our students. We also figure that we have learned an awful lot about virtual education, and we're going to continue to learn more. So we thought we could create our own virtual schools, school opportunities as well. Again, we would have students enroll in the designated school that we would designate as the virtual schools. And those courses would be taught by our staff. And I'll talk you through which schools we would anticipate doing this and why. But students could actually do a combination of those two. They could take some courses with us through our virtual school program, or they could take some Virtual Virginia courses. They could mix and match them and meet their graduation requirements and actually receive a diploma from the school in which they enrolled through us. The nice thing for us is that those students would be included in our ADM, which stands for Average Daily Membership, which our funding is based on. So if we are able to get some students to join us who normally wouldn't have, then that's only going to increase our funding from the state. And we also get a fair amount of families who ask us if they could, as homeschooled students or private schooled students or non-public school students, if they could participate in our extracurricular activities and VHSL activities. And the answer by policy has always been no. But we're saying if these students enroll through our designated school and take a combination of Virtual Virginia and our own virtual school courses, or one or the other, that they would, if they meet VHSL eligibility guidelines, they would be able to participate, and they would be able to participate in our other extracurricular activities. So if you go to the next slide, we're revealing here to you which schools we would envision being the best fit for that. And again, we have met with those schools and the principals and the entire faculty and talked with them about why they would be the best fit. And the first bullet really is the main reason why they're the best fit. They have the capacity to implement this now. Someone mentioned earlier that in Eastern Montgomery, they have the lowest pupil-teacher ratio of any of our other secondary schools. They have courses where there are 12 or 15 students in the classroom instead of 20 and 25 like the other schools. So those teachers have the capacity to have a couple of students doing remote learning with them. We would set that up to be synchronous so that while they're teaching their class of 12 kids, they might have 3 kids coming in remotely through our virtual school program. And so those schools have the capacity to implement this program now. As the program were to grow, we may have to add staffing, but right now we believe it's a fit. The other thing that the schools would be very excited about, and the principals particularly have said they're excited about, is many of our schools have their own innovative programs that are unique to their schools or their strand. And this would be something for Eastern Montgomery High School and Shawsville Middle to call their own. That their innovative program that would be unique to those schools would be that they are, in addition to being a traditional school, they also are our designated virtual schools. And they were pretty excited about that. It does increase student enrollment, as I mentioned earlier. It potentially impacts several things positively, like accreditation, diversity of the student body, equity of access to courses, and it potentially increases involvement and even success in athletics and other programs at the school because homeschooled students could now potentially participate. It also, one of the things we hear often from Shawsville Middle and Eastern Montgomery is a large percentage of their staff at both schools are itinerant. They're shared. There's just not enough students enrolled in their courses where they have a full load of courses all day long. So they might teach 2 courses at Eastern Montgomery and then have to go to Christiansburg, or they might teach a course at Shawsville Middle and then run over to Auburn Middle and teach 3 courses. So there's a lot of itinerant movement of staff because there's not enough to sustain full-time teachers at each of those schools in many of the subject areas. And if this virtual school program grows to the point where they do have a full load, they could remain at their home schools. They would be able to do a partial face-to-face teaching during the day and then switch into a partial remote teaching for the other part of the day. And then they would be able to remain at their home school all day. So that is what we envision the program to look like. It does require some policy changes, but I didn't know if maybe I should pause here and ask if there are questions, or Dr. Meyer, should I just move on to the policies?
No, questions are fine. What questions do you have about the virtual school option for students?
Okay, so I have a couple. So how does it potentially increase diversity of the student body? What's the thought about how that looks or works if it's virtual?
So do you want me to answer that, Dr. Meyer?
Sure.
Okay, so one thing I guess I didn't say is, and it gets borne out in looking at the policy revisions, is any student, any child of school age living in Montgomery County who wants to participate in a purely fully virtual school environment, they must enroll at Shawsville or Eastmont. The option will not exist at Blacksburg, Christiansburg, or Auburn. So if you live in Blacksburg, Christiansburg, or Auburn school zone and you want to be fully virtual, you are now going to have to enroll as a Shawsville Middle or Eastern Montgomery High School student.
Okay, and maybe it's just a head thing for me, but when I'm hearing virtual, these kids are really not in the building for the biggest part.
Well, you know, what could happen with this as well is some students could choose to come to the building for a class or 2. Like if these virtual high school students want to come in and take the band class at the school, they'll be able to do that. Or if they want to come in and take their classes at home, but that come in for the extracurricular activities after school, they'll be able to do that as well.
Okay, so with VHSL, with students moving from one community to another community through this program, how would their eligibility be affected?
Yeah, what would happen is since it's in our county, as a superintendent, I have the ability to actually make them eligible immediately if they were to choose the virtual program. Now, if someone were to move from outside the county, I couldn't, I would not be able to do that. But if there are current students who now want this option for various reasons, but they still want to participate, they would be allowed to be immediately eligible.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'll move to the policy revisions.
Quick question, I was on mute, sorry. In following up on what Penny was talking about. So they would be eligible at Eastmont, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And the VHL requirement would be they would have to be enrolled in 3 classes, 3 block classes. because it's a block system. That's another reason. I don't know if this was on there as well, also, Mr. Pauly, but the block system makes it easy to enroll kids in virtual programs. It's 4 classes first semester, 4 classes second semester. So if they're enrolled in 3 classes through Eastern Montgomery, they will be allowed to participate.
Yeah, that's not on the list, but we did talk about it.
Okay, so if you had a student who wanted to do the scenario that you were talking about, as far as still wanting to stay in their home school, and they were doing 3 classes virtual and 2 the other, they could not participate in athletics or other VHSL programs except for at Eastern Montgomery, right?
Mr. Pauly, explain that.
I think I understand what you're asking. It's not our intent to open up the Montgomery County virtual school to students on a partial basis while attending another school in Montgomery County. Does that make sense? Like
say that again. I missed a couple of words.
So the scenario you described was not what we intended for this to be used for. So a student who is, say, a Christiansburg High School student who only wants to take 2 classes at Christiansburg High and then wants to take 2 in virtual high school at Eastmont, that is not an option that is part of the virtual program. They either are a virtual school student or they are a regular student at their regular school.
Now, let me say this. We do offer virtual Virginia classes at all high schools. And so if you're at Christiansburg High School and you're enrolled and go to that school, you would still be allowed to take a virtual Virginia class. That would not be a problem. But if you go full time, you would need to enroll in Eastern Montgomery High School.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So there are a few policies that would need to be revised and that we are considering this your first reading. And I have a summary here I'd like to go through with you first, and then we'll click on the thing. So Brenda, don't click on it just yet. So there are 2 policies, 7-2.2 and 7-2.4, that are impacted by a need to be revised in order to do this virtual school. Both of them have to do with where you attend school and how your attendance is counted and where you get assigned and so on. So within 7-2.4 and 2.2, there are several places where it has the same phrase repeated. And I don't know the exact words off the top of my head, but the sentiment is you will attend the school in the area in which you live. Right, so that's repeated over and over and over, that you will attend the school in the area in which you reside. What I have to do is go in and insert this sentence as a caveat after that sentence. So everywhere that sentence was about going to the school where you reside, I had to add, unless you go to the virtual program, then you're going to go to the designated school. Does that make sense? I just paste that in there everywhere. All right, then looking specifically at other parts of each of those policies. In 7-2.4, that made the most sense to put our description of the virtual school program because it's in 7-2.4 where the policy speaks to how you enroll in middle school and how you enroll in high school. So it seemed to make sense. This was where we would also put how you enroll in the virtual program. And we basically just had to revise the statement that used to say MCPS does not participate in Virtual Virginia's full-time program. We had to change it to that we are going to if they do it as part of the virtual school program. And then we had to revise our definition of external courses. As Dr. Meyer just said, all of our students are able to take Virtual Virginia courses, but we have placed limits on those in policy, and in some cases consider Virtual Virginia courses to be external. Sometimes we consider them internal, and there are conditions under which we can consider them external. We had to revise the language in that policy to basically say, if you're taking them as part of the virtual school program, they're all internal. Will not apply the definition of external. And then, as in most policies, there's the line, exceptions may be granted by the superintendent or his designee, blah, blah, blah. And so here's that line. Exceptions may be granted for students who demonstrate a need, and we did intentionally use the word need, not choose, but students who demonstrate a need to take courses in a fully remote environment for a defined period of time due to extenuating circumstances to remain enrolled in their current school if courses are available in a remote learning environment. So, and it goes on to say that they have to have a plan and follow through with the plan to return to their current school and resume face-to-face once the extenuating circumstances no longer exist. So it's basically addressing a situation like the current pandemic. So if we have students who have say a medical need to stay home, and it would not be wise for them medically to attend school under the mitigated circumstances we just described earlier, then we could grant permission for those students to remain at home, do full virtual through their home school because it's available. But once we would reopen fully, and that school would no longer have the remote learning option, that student needs to return to their current school. So we put that in there as a caveat for this situation, and God forbid if any other similar type situation occurs where we have unique circumstances where all schools are offering remote learning and we have students who absolutely cannot go in. Any questions about that one?
Okay, so about the overall program, the equity piece. So I'm a parent. I don't feel safe about having my child go back into the regular school setting, or my child is doing better with virtual learning, but I don't have access to internet to be able to participate. How do we handle those situations?
Dr. Meyer, do you want to answer that?
You know, we can evaluate current students who are in that situation and make decisions on a case-by-case basis. But most students would be expected to have internet access to be able to access this program.
Right, which means it's not going to be equitable.
Well, like I said, we will look at it on a case-by-case basis. So if there's a student who is being successful, then we can see what we can do to provide access. But we can't promise access.
Okay. 7-2.2 had a section, it's the very last section in 7-2.2 that actually is a prohibition statement that says that students who are in non-public schools or part-time enrollment cannot participate, just flat out says they cannot participate in any of our extracurricular athletic activities. And so the language needed to be revised to basically say, unless they are involved, are part of the MCPS virtual school program, they can enroll. And then if they meet requirements for VHSL, they can in fact participate. So Brenda, if you want to click on the revisions, what you are normally accustomed to seeing, board members, you're normally accustomed to seeing a red line version of this. And I assume that Dr. Meyer, they're going to have access to read this themselves later, right?
Correct. Right.
Okay. I'm not going to read all this. So everything in black is normal, but there's 7-2.4. So nothing changed there. If you keep scrolling till you hit a red, there you go. There's the first time I had to cut and paste the statement that says, hey, you have to attend school where you live unless you want to be part of this program. So there's one spot, up a little bit more, and there's another spot where that needed to be inserted, and then keep scrolling up. And there's the description of the program itself. And you can see the blue is what our school board attorney has recommended as a revision. So the red is all new that I added, and the blue is the revisions from the school board attorney as of this morning. So I don't know if, should I pause and have folks read this, or I've hit the highlights.
Yeah, I think you've summarized most of it. They probably want to go back and take a
Yeah, I think you just want to go back and take a closer look. Keep scrolling up, Brent. It's quite lengthy. There were a lot of areas that needed to be addressed. There's one right there. Scroll back down just a little bit. And yeah, a little more. There you go. So right there, it talks about high school students entering from non-accredited or homeschooling versus middle school students entering from non-accredited or from homeschooling. So those groups of students are already addressed in policy for when they come into regular school from those settings. And it just, some of it needed to be reiterated for if they're entering the virtual program from those settings. But it's the same policy language, just applied to coming into the virtual school. And you'll see that it's the same language from earlier. So if you scroll up, keep going, keep going. Oh, slow down, wait, go, no, that's all right. Just keep going to the very end. What she went by kind of quickly there was just the redefining external courses, and that you'll see that. All right, here's another spot where we had to insert the statement that you have to go to the school where you reside unless you're part of the program, and then scroll up so it's more the middle of the page there, Brenda. And there's the part, there you go. There's the part that needed to be rewritten for admission of non-public schools for part-time enrollment prohibition. So what is in black typeface is what has always been there. And I just took the period away and put unless, and went on with what the explanation was.
Okay, so the transportation piece.
I think that she wanted you to go back to that, Brenda.
I saw it in a couple of the other places, and then it was right there where you're at.
Yeah, just
where it says
all the way.
the responsibility of the family to get the child back and forth if they're enrolled in this school, and to participate in athletics.
Correct.
Or other extracurricular activities. Again, that's an equity issue.
Well, I mean, we feel like if someone wants to be in a virtual program, I mean, we're not going to be able to. We have buses that go back and forth every day. I mean, if they want to be in the regular school, they ride the bus. If they want to be in a virtual environment and then participate in extracurricular activities after school, they would have to provide their own transportation.
Yeah, that's really no different for the way it is right now.
Right.
Well,
I mean, basically,
right now, then that's an equity piece also. Then.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
right.
So,
yeah,
fair enough.
Again, if we're talking about giving students an opportunity to be in a better situation for themselves academically, but then I'm just saying, if we're talking equity, that's a big piece of that.
Well, like I
say,
allow
the students to participate, and it's going to help us to be able to better serve all of our students, to allow children to do this. Yeah, that's something I believe we need to be looking at.
Well, something we looked at for next year with our students who are at school are activity buses. Right now, if you want to participate in an extracurricular activity after school, you have to provide your own transportation after school home.
Mhm.
And so that's something that we have actually, in fact, as part of strategic planning, is looking at the cost of activity buses for activities after school to help students who cannot get rides after their extracurricular activity after school. And so that's an issue that we have now as well.
Yeah, so we need to look at it. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's my last slide. If you go to the next one, I'll know for sure.
Hey,
Yeah, the
Carl,
next one.
Carl,
The
before you
last
move
one,
forward,
yes.
this is Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, so question for you. There's a chance anyway. I don't, obviously we're still a couple months away from school starting this fall, but, I've heard from parents who are concerned also out of, an abundance of caution that may not want to send their children to school building under one of the other options. So I'm assuming that under this plan, we're not giving them the option to continue attending the school in their normal, their normal attendance zone, but they could basically switch to one of the designated schools in order to do this. What does that look like for students, families that want to do this, maybe for one semester?
All right. So yeah, I can answer that, Carl. It would not, basically, if a student wants to do it for one semester and they plan on going back to their home school, once all of this is done and we're back full time, they would be allowed to stay enrolled in their current school because the current schools are doing online learning and synchronous learning. So if a student's at Christiansburg High School now, they do not feel, safe or whatever for coming in on the days that are their designated days, they would not have to come in on their designated days if they wanted to stay home and just do everything, online. Now, once we go back full time and everyone is back in school in a regular schedule, we do not have the resources to allow that to continue to happen throughout the district. So that's why we know there will still be families that want to do something online for the various reasons. And so that's why we are focusing our resources in one strand to allow for this option to continue even after we get back to whatever normal may be at some point.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this slide, I'm sorry, Sue.
Go ahead, Annie. I was muted. Go ahead. Oh, she's muted.
All right, so this slide tells us about our next steps, and what we wanted to lay it out for you is this is how many weeks we have till school starts and kind of where we are in our planning, and just kind of lays out the timelines for you. So this week you can see these are by weeks, so not days, but during the week of, that's where our focus is. So this week we're going to do a survey on transportation, some of those questions you asked earlier about what if a parent can transport their child. We definitely need to know that. Or are they getting someone else to do it for them? But the big question is, do we need to transport your child to school for you? To find out about childcare needs, how many people would need some of these other services that we're looking at, so that we can really provide a real plan based upon the needs of our community. And also to identify those interests in virtual opportunities so that we can continue to plan there as well. Then what we'll do next week is those individuals who did not complete the survey, principals are going to be following up with families. So they're going to be calling families if they need to do a home visit to get a survey. I already talked to one principal who said, I'm going to be doing home visits to get this information, because we really need to get a comprehensive understanding of what our community needs are. Right now we're providing you guys the blanket based upon the information we have that was released today at 2 o'clock. And so what we've got to do with what we know is now fill in what our community is going to tell us they need based upon our template we provided for you here. What are the real needs of the community? So they're going to follow up with those folks so that we really have a comprehensive view. I'll say this, based upon the response of the community to graduation and what a great job they did responding to the requests that we have, I feel like we can get some really comprehensive information from our community. Our communications are going very well and we're getting excellent responses. Then next week on the 16th, I'm sorry, that says the date instead of the week of, but you all will vote whether or not the transportation plan you want is transportation option 1 or option 2, because we really have to have that piece of information to continue our forward planning. And then during the week of June 22nd to the 20th, and the other vote also next week will be on this, the middle school and high school virtual plan policy revisions that go with that. Then during the week of the 22nd and the 29th, our principals are really going to be digging into the data that they have, working with transportation to develop routes. We're really looking at this student by student. So that's a huge amount of work for our principals to get done. Then what we're going to do is we've identified those needs and we'll communicate to our families here the options that are available for childcare in the community and get that out to our families so that they have time to plan. And then the week of the 13th, our principals will complete their class assignments saying who's in which classes and what days. What does that look like? July 20th, our official online student registration process will happen. This is what we did last year when parents went online and completed the online registration. Then we're right to the beginning of the school year. July 27th and 28th are administrative training. Our new teacher training begins on July 29th. And from that point forward, school is really a go. We have our teacher flex days and work days the week of August 3rd, and school starts August 13th. One thing I did not get to put in here because it just came out at the press conferences, we also do have to submit our plan to the state, which specifies how we're going to meet all of the requirements that are put into place for mitigating the public health risks, what our plan for new instruction looks like, how we plan to go in and out of phases back and forth, and then also how we are going to address learning that was lost. So that plan is something we'll have to submit to the state during this time as well.
Okay,
Any questions? Sorry.
Next slide.
I have a question because I was on mute before, and it was kind of a follow-up to what Mark had asked about the virtual learning. So if someone says they're going to do virtual learning for this semester, so a parent decides they don't want their student, because I just want to make sure I understand, they don't want their child to go back into the classroom, and they would like them to just do remote learning for this semester. They would stay within their home school.
Correct.
Are they committed to stay online through the semester? Can they opt out of the online and then just pick up doing, just say 2 months go in, they say, this, I don't want them to do this anymore. I want them now to start attending school. Will we allow that?
Yeah, then we would allow them to get back into their rotation of going to see a teacher. Absolutely. Yeah. And there may be, someone a family who simply thinks that we know we're going to do this for the remainder of our middle and high school career, and they can go ahead and enroll in the virtual. But but for now, if you have the intention of going back to your home school, then you can stay enrolled in your home school as long as we're offering the remote learning and synchronous learning. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Okay. And so, basically, we're on Annie just presented to you guys the timeline. And as you can see, we're on a tight timeline. We have basically 8 weeks until we open our school doors again. And so, there's not a lot of time to drag this out, as you can see, because all the things need to be done. And so next week I'll be asking you to vote for option 1 and option 2. It's pretty much a transportation vote is what it is. And then to the policies surrounding virtual school. One thing that we left out of this presentation that I want to bring up that I wish I'd remembered to put a note in here, but that's okay. We'll talk about it now is a lot of folks are asking questions about extracurricular activities and athletics and that type of thing. And what will that look like in the fall? And, I have the opportunity, I'm our region superintendent representative on the Virginia High School League Executive Committee. And to let you know, there have been no decisions that have been made at this point. However, it looks like we will open school under phase 3. That is a very good likelihood. Phase 3 still requires 6 feet of social distancing, and actually in athletic programs, 10 feet. So if there's any conditioning practice, anything going on, and so I think that might give you an idea of what extracurricular activities may not happening possibly. Right. However, I will let you know that the high school league and the executive committee, we're meeting in the next couple of weeks, and there are some things that are being considered. Of course, the hope is you know, the strong hope is that maybe by second semester we're back to somewhat normal. And one option that has been looked at that another state is implementing is basically all 3 seasons in the second semester. So for instance, the first season would be the winter season actually in January and February, and then going back to the fall season in March and April, and then the spring season in May and June, and they would be abbreviated seasons. And so so that's something that's being looked at. You know, no one has totally, you know, the Virginia High School League has not made a decision about the fall, but the way it's looking, it's very unlikely. As for other extracurricular activities such as band, you know, there are still decisions that need to be made there, and that will more likely be a regional or statewide decision as to how that looks as well. And so we will, I'll be keeping you informed of that, and also trying to keep our athletic directors, coaches, and our extracurricular sponsors informed as well. As I know things, I will let them know. What questions do you have? There's a lot of information there. You know, again, you know, if anyone has any thoughts about scheduling and you know, why things might work or not work, you know, please feel free to call Mr. Pauly. And that's not as you school board, but that's anybody who's listening in. Call Mr. Pauly if you have questions or thoughts about middle and high school, and or email him. And the same for Dr. Wickham for elementary. If you have thoughts, you can either call or email Dr. Wickham, and they'll be glad to talk to you. You know, scheduling is very complex, especially in middle and high schools, and especially high schools. And they have a lot of experience in doing it and understanding it. And you know, and I'll be the first to admit that our options are not good. I think they're very bad. But we're dealing with the hand that we've been dealt, and it's unfortunate. But they're bad options. They really are. And I'll be the first to admit that.
I would like to thank you and your team for all the work. I mean, I don't think people really realize the tremendous amount of work that has gone into, you know, coming up with options 1 and 2, and all the tiny little working pieces that that go into this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. We have a great team. Our administrative team is second to none.
I concur, and the questions I had really were just sad things that you have to deal with from what you've been dealt with. But yes, I think you guys do a fabulous job, and this is on top of everything else you got to do. And thank you so much.
All right, anything else? No other questions.
We have to do some studying.
I know there's a lot to study there. There's
overwhelming
yeah,
information.
it really is overwhelming. You're exactly right. There's no doubt about that.
I definitely appreciate the fact that you guys been working on this all along in a short period of time.
Yes. Okay, so on to the next item on our agenda. I would like for Ms. Diggs, our Director of Equity, to start us off tonight. Ms. Diggs, are you out there?
I am here.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Good to hear you, Ms. Diggs. I'll let you lead this off and let you know of some thoughts and plans that we have as a school division as we're moving into the next several weeks. Go ahead.
Okay. So do you want me to start off with the plans that we have and moving forward with looking at equity in our division?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Go right ahead. Sure.
Okay, thanks. So we got put on pause for a little bit because of COVID in terms of really looking at implementing our equity strategic plan. Nonetheless, a plan was developed, and we feel like it's a pretty robust plan. a plan with lots of good actions in it, and we're just ready to move forward with it. And so one of the areas, of course, that we're looking at and think we really need to focus on is cultural awareness and cultural competency for our teachers. And we like to think about, I'm hoping people will think about that as being a resource that teachers can have, or a way for us to tool and retool our teachers so that they have what they need, particularly when our students come back. And I think I don't need to say this, but our kids are going to be coming back with a whole lot more on their plate than they left with. So making sure that they have the resources and the tools that they need when our students come back, I think is going to be really important. So one of the ways that we're looking at that is making sure I'm in conversation now with our teaching tolerant consultant. She has provided services for us for the last 2 school years. And so one of the things that we're looking at is, again, having her provide that service for us, but probably remotely, because I think that will is what we're going to have to use this school year. But taking advantage of those Wednesdays when they're doing the deep cleaning day, and our teachers will be in the throes of planning, and we can use that as PD opportunities to offer those trainings to our teachers, at least for a couple of months, so that we make sure that our teachers have a real fundamental and foundational training through the teaching tolerance program. And then in addition to that, providing some additional trainings for them, particularly around self-reflection and self-awareness, because I think there's a lot of research that suggests that each of us as human beings, we have our differences, we have different experiences, and recognizing and thinking and talking about what those experiences are, so we can think about how we approach our students, and giving teachers a safe place where they can have those conversations. So that's first and foremost on our list of things to.
Ms. Dix, can I interject real quick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, and one thing that in the past 2 years, it's been choice PD. We've had about 25% of our teachers actually go through teaching tolerance, but we think it's time with the strategic plan that there is a focus in terms of equity in the strategic plan. And so we're going to make it a requirement for all teachers to go through teaching tolerance, and we're going to try to get everyone through the program this first semester. And so we're going to ask all teachers, all teachers will be required to go through teaching tolerance first semester. It's just too important of a subject, and it is part of our strategic plan that we'll be moving forward with anyway, and it will be required professional development. So thank you, Ms. Dix.
And in addition to that, the other trainings will be probably shorter versions of the trainings that teacher tolerance does, so that we can get in those schools, have those trainings like during faculty meetings, where we're giving our schools and teachers and administrators time to really focus on that. And again, so that will be including everyone and not just some of the staff members. The second thing that we're going to be working on, and you guys all know that I'm going to be retiring, so the month of July I don't work, so a lot of these things have to happen really, really quickly, is to create a website that's around equity commitment. And that website really, I'm hoping to focus on it being a hub, a resource hub for our teachers, but not just our teachers, but our families, as well as community members. And so we'll have resources such as all kinds of resources for teachers in terms of culturally responsive teaching, how to respond to differences in your classroom, and then providing like resources for parents in terms of, right now I have come up with like a book list of different various books that might be of interest to parents, all parents, as well as community members. And that is a piece that we'll continue to work on and continue to add to, is the resource hub. And then the other area that we're going to focus on is making sure that we pull that the equity team together. I have already met with one of the team members who has agreed to work with me, and I don't know if you all know Justin Grimes, Dr. Justin Grimes. He works at Virginia Tech. He works in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. He's already been a resource to us in the school division in that he helped to serve on the equity team, but he also mentors some of our students at some of our most vulnerable students at that, at Montgomery Central. He's got just an interest in making sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students. And he's also working to create some opportunities, some learning opportunities for both our teachers as well as our students. So Justin and I have already gotten started. We'll be inviting the other team members in because it goes without saying that equity is going to be a question that's going to be on everybody's mind as we're moving forward, whether it was COVID related or even the new crisis that our students are facing, many of our students, particularly our students of color. So we just need to be intentional about addressing those needs. And one of the ways that we will do that is by creating an equity audit. And hopefully, Penny, that will help to address some of the concerns that you have, to have this team pull together, create that audit, get the information out to our schools, get that feedback, and then figure out ways that we can work collectively to address the needs of our community. So those are our big ones. Just as we start, once our kids are really involved and engaged, we also will have student councils and involving and getting feedback from our students, particularly our secondary students. That will be focused mostly in our secondary schools.
So thanks, Ms. Diggs. I'm really excited about the work that you're doing and our school division is doing in this area. Ms. Karan, do you want to go over the statement of support and inclusive school resolution?
I've got a question or two.
Sure, Ms. Franklin, go ahead.
So when we're talking about self-reflection, are we talking about bias training?
It definitely will be some bias training. So it's really sometimes hard to have that discussion about bias until people can recognize themselves and they can understand what they're bringing to the table. So the self-reflection first is it really will lead to bias training. That is like the primary step that leads to the bias training.
Okay, so the only piece that will be mandatory is teaching tolerance.
So the other trainings we're going to be doing during faculty meetings, and teachers are required to come to faculty meetings.
Okay, so the only mandatory training will be teaching tolerance. PD will be teaching tolerance.
Teaching tolerance is part of it, but then the other piece will be taking place in the faculty meetings. Teaching tolerance doesn't happen in a faculty meeting. It's
right.
Right. So but the other piece will happen in the faculty meetings.
So faculty meetings are mandatory.
Correct. Oh yeah.
Yes.
So there would be a piece, I won't say offered, but there would be something happening every month or however often faculty meetings are around the issue of racial equity.
That would certainly be my goal. And I think it's important to remember too that this has to be ongoing. So while it's happening this school year, it also needs to happen the next school year and the next school year. Like it doesn't just, we don't come to really building capacity until we are putting this in place consistently.
Right, which means, quite frankly, we need to be looking at a policy that says this is what we do continuously within the district. And I'll just say tolerance is not something that folks really want to hear, that people are tolerating me. So I'm just putting that out there at this point.
Good point.
That's the name of their program, correct, Judy?
It is. And we will certainly be giving them some guidance on the kinds of issues that we would like for them to present to our faculty. It's bias training, it's critical practices, and culturally responsive teaching. They have a variety of things that they can present. So I think we need to be intentional about making sure that those are the things that are presented.
Okay, so for me, as always, there needs to be some type of accountability when we're implementing these types of programs, because without it, what's the point?
You know, one other piece that needs to be mentioned too is that the strategic plan, there will be a lot of pieces within the strategic plan that will be presented when that's finalized and presented to the school board. And as you know, one of the 5 areas is equity. And so Judy and that committee have done a lot of work. You want to talk about that any, Judy?
Sure. There are a lot of different pieces, of course, of the equity plan that we haven't talked about, that will also be pieces that will be, there won't be choice. One will be the new model guidance for discipline, which means that we have to review and revise our code of conduct. We have to review and revise the way that we are looking at discipline at each of the schools. And so that's one piece. The other thing that's in our current equity plan is just making sure that we're providing positive and supports and interventions for our students. So our PBIS is already a model that's proven to just give us those, the outcomes that we want, especially when it's done with fidelity. And so that's another thing that is in our plan. Again, just working with the equity team, doing that audit, equity audit, as well as looking at our practices, our policies. That will be one of the goals of the equity team, having that student input, having parent input, of course, and as well as community input. So all of those will continue to be in place. We will also be assigning equity leads in each of our schools. And so the equity leads will also facilitate in making sure that we are gathering information from our schools, that our schools know that they have a resource in their building, person that they can bring information to, and that information will also be shared with the equity team.
Mistakes, I think if I remember right, there is an also equity policy development as well, all right? When we come to that point, we may have a equity policy.
So I don't think that we necessarily came up with an equity policy, but we already have equity principles. So we're just waiting for their approval. Okay. And those equity principles include things like, okay. But the equity principles just basically say that this is who we are as Montgomery County. But that's part of our equity plan. That would be one thing that would also be posted on our website, as well as our inclusivity statement. So those are some of the things, of course, that we also want to make sure that are publicized so that people see that we're intentional about the work that's before us.
Well, we already have information that's publicized and out there about what we say we do. There needs to be a policy to make sure this is what we continuously do.
Gotcha.
So that there is meat to this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Ms. Cron?
Yes, I was just, I got sidetracked looking at the strategic plan. but I feel like, at one point in there, we may look into developing a equity policy. I don't know if you want me to read over the letter that both Dr. Meyer and I am signing to send to the school community. If you like, just, look over, but I would like to read over the resolution that we're going to vote. And this is the resolution, and this is a VSBA model that we adopted to our school system. It is a resolution condemning racism and affirming the division's commitment to an inclusive school environment for all. Whereas members of the Montgomery County School Board, as well as the Montgomery County Public School staff, are saddened and outraged by recent events that demonstrate the prejudice and injustice that persists in our country. Whereas racism and hate have no place in our schools or our society, and we must protect the constitutional rights of every person who lives, works, and learns in our community. Whereas we cannot be silent, we urgently must act to stop the racial injustice that harms and anguishes Black people, who are our family, friends, neighbors, students, staff members, and fellow Americans. Whereas we must listen, those who have endured discrimination and intolerance deserve to be heard as they share the stories and truth about their experiences and feelings, and we must seek with the great empathy to understand their challenges and their pain. Whereas we must learn, it's time to engage our community in meaningful and honest conversation about racial inequality, to build alliances with those committed to justice for all, and to work together to support our shared conviction that racism must end. Whereas we must lead, each of us individually and collectively is responsible for creating and nurturing an anti-racist learning environment where every child is respected and valued for who they are, regardless of their skin color. We must actively acknowledge, address, and prevent racial bias that occurs as a result of division policies, practices, and actions. And whereas we must do better, our school division can be and will be a sanctuary of safety in our community and beacon of light for the world as we build and strengthen the trust with those we serve and we model the acceptance of all people. Therefore, we resolve that we, members of the Montgomery County School Board, stand steadfast in our commitment to foster an inclusive educational environment where every student, teacher, support professional, parent, and community member is treated with dignity and respect, as well as our commitment to continue fighting for racial justice and human and civil rights for all. So I will have a motion to accept this resolution.
It sounds like this item will not move forward due to lack of a motion.
And I'm going to say I'm not going to motion for this because I shouldn't have to be the one who motions for this.
I think as a chair, I can motion, all right? I thought I can. I'll make a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Now let's have a roll call, please, Brenda.
Did you want to have discussion, Ms. Karan, before
Oh,
I
I'm
have
sorry.
the
Yeah, I was too speeding up. Any discussions?
I'm sorry, Ms. Karan. I must have missed. I had the volume turned down for a second there. This is for this resolution, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So I just wanted to say that I'm appreciative that that we are doing this resolution. I don't know how much. I think people have been watching the news a lot lately, and one of the things that kind of popped up on my feed. It's just a small thing and an example, but the controversy surrounding the CEO of CrossFit and that whole controversy, and I do think that it's important at a time like this that and especially because this has been something that we have been working on, that we do, stand up and say something. So, but yeah, I'm obviously going to support it.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments?
For me, I just think that we should make it broader than on the whereas. And no disrespect to anyone, I just think it should be people of color. I don't agree with a lot of the demonstrations that happened and the murders that were committed, the buildings that were destroyed. I have a problem with that type protest. So for me, I think we need to make it a broader ban. I'm in support of it. I just, for me, I want to see something that doesn't target just one thing. I have different views that I've watched. I've listened to people. I would have liked to have us as a board made this instead of a couple people. Those are just my viewpoints.
This came from the School Board Association. This was their template that was sent out.
It's just, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, this is so hard. We need to have like a buzzer system.
I know. There's your hand.
There is one.
Is there?
My hand.
Is there a buzzer system? I didn't know there was one.
It's not a buzzer, but you can pull down and raise your hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's on the chat format. You can see, but
okay.
Yes, Ms. Cass, I'm listening.
Anyway, I feel like this is really important, and I would have liked to have more conversation about it, and also more time to really, other than you reading it to me and me just saying, yeah, that sounds good. I just think it requires a lot of thought, and to make sure we say what we want to say. And I don't disagree with anything in this at all, but it's just we didn't really even talk about it. And again, it's a template, and I just think it would have been good to have some conversation about this before we all just said aye.
I agree.
I agree.
It is just an affirming the condemnation of racism. It is not a policy per se, so we're not putting any law or policy in order. We just, if you are against, if you're against racism, I think all the verbiage in there is very sensible. It's just a caring about people of color in general as a human being. So I didn't think it will create an issue, because it's not like a policy changing that required first and second.
But it should say that then. It should say that.
But that's not what this is about. What is happening in this country right now is the outrage of the murdering of Black people, which is proportionately throughout history been a huge issue. This is saying we can talk about resolutions about anything else at any other time, and we do. And this is about what's happening in this country right now related to the killing of Black people. So this is saying,
with it? Are you comfortable with this, Penny?
we need to be saying something. It's been 2 weeks.
I feel like sometimes it's like, I don't want to, do we say, yes, we need to say something, but I want to make sure we say the right thing. That's all. I don't want to say
I think it needs to be discussed.
What I want is for us to live up to what we would agree to that this is saying.
I agree. I think that's what's the most important. Everyone's out there saying something, but it's what you do and how we act upon it. That's what's important.
So if you say nothing, then there's nothing for you to act on.
I don't disagree with any of this. I mean, I don't disagree with anything here.
I mean, your aye or nay is just the agreement of all the things that it says here, and I think there is nothing nothing wrong in there, but I mean, we can go, and if it doesn't go through, then the resolution affirmation will fail, and we move forward and think about something else. I mean, it is what Ms. Franklin's saying. It has been already a time, and we haven't said anything. And you know, I think it's time for us to say something. That's why the letter is going to go to our families as well. That we have to acknowledge, we have to listen, we have to you know, appreciate what everybody's going through. So if there are too many objections, if we are more than 4 or 4 board members not agreeing, that is one thing, but we can go ahead and say how many of us want to say A or nay, and then we'll go from there.
Goonan, I just think that if the board is going to put something out as a whole, and I totally agree with the meaning behind this going out, but I feel like we're kind of stereotyping it to one thing, because if we're talking
one
about
thing is happening,
but a lot of things have happened that we haven't done this for as well, that are important to other people, but we haven't made the effort to go out and make sure that we let them know that we feel that way that they do about what happened to them.
so give me an example so we can do that too.
Well, I just mean, you know, I mean, this type of thing has happened to every race of every color, but when it happens
no, it has not.
Yeah, it has.
No, it has not. No, it has not. We do not have white people being killed in the streets.
And it's not so it's not just say Black racism, it just says racism that covers all
but we're turning this into something political.
It's not political. This is about people's lives.
Yeah, I did not think about.
I agree.
Yeah,
and that's why I feel like it's the lives of everybody.
Well, once everybody is seen on the news having someone kneel on their neck and kill them, people being shot in their homes, children being shot because they were in a neighborhood that someone didn't think they needed to be in, someone jogging down the street, and people following them with guns and taping it and killing them. Until we see other people having that happen to them every day practically, then I'll be more than happy to support that too. But Penny, that's not what's happening.
Penny,
that's not what's happening.
I'm not disagreeing with why you want this done at all. I'm not. But we're only going to see what they're going to want us to see or show us.
Really? We know that. And when they're not showing us being killed, they're showing us as thugs or something less than. So that's what they want us to see.
I think we should have a vote.
But I think it's important. I mean, I want to back Penny, and no disrespect to those that may disagree or feel uncomfortable for one reason or another. But, you know, even though I'm Middle Eastern, I think I definitely classify as white. I look white. And it can be hard for those of us who didn't grow up with some of the same, some of the same experiences to understand this stuff. And I think this is something that, for me, and I think for a lot of Americans, is something that just in the last few years, maybe we've kind of tuned into this thing that I think, Black people have been dealing with for years, and I don't think we understood it. And I think what we're seeing now in this country is we're seeing that a much wider percentage of the population is seeing it, and they're seeing it because of technology, because now we've got video cameras everywhere, and this stuff is starting to kind of come out, and it's the first time, or 2 or 3 or 4 maybe, like, people can make excuses, and I think we've hit a tipping point here, and I think the majority of the country is outraged. I mean, I think I saw a poll today, something like 75% of people polled are in agreement. I absolutely, I mean, for me, yeah, I want to vote. I think it's absolutely important for us to say something.
I agree with Mark. I mean, I would rather say yes to something than say no. I think, and I don't disagree with anything here, anything that Mark has said or Penny has said. My only point was just, I wasn't prepared for. I always like to make sure that what we say is the strongest we can say, but I would have no problem with saying yes to this. So I think we should just vote.
This just came out from the association this morning
Yeah, literally this
because of
morning.
the outcry from across the state for us as a school board, as school boards, to be making a statement. And they do this all the time, send us resolutions on different issues.
And I think some school
Because
boards.
because this meeting was scheduled for today. Because if it had come out and we had to wait till next week, then we would have had to wait till next week. But it came out today.
And I think a lot of school boards ask VSBA's direction how to handle. That's why I think they came up with this as well. And I think we are, really lucky where we live because there's a great collaboration between law enforcement and our community groups. And in general, it's not like that in everywhere. And we definitely has been seeing this. So definitely, I know the great event that happened with Dialogue on Race and law enforcement a couple days ago, and our Board of Supervisors showed up, and great speeches by the town council members in support of our neighbors and friends and all basically, our community. And school board, I mean, I was there not with my school board hat, but so I think it's time for us to show the support as a community group, and also elected officials. So we're ready, Brenda. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Can I ask one question?
Sure.
The letter, do you want to take a look at that letter again too? Because I mean, that's representative of our board as well. That will come from you and myself.
I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to read, or I'll be happy to let everybody read.
Do you mind reading that for us?
Sure, I will do. Okay. And this is addressed to MCPS school community. As we celebrated success of class 2020 during graduation weekend, our hearts were heavy. Our nation mourned another tragic loss of life with the death of George Floyd. Our highest priority is to provide a safe environment for our students. This means listening to our students when they express fear and hurt about national events. For them, we will continue to learn and listen. We are committed to continuing the work of bringing equity and cultural diversity in our schools. This includes hiring a diverse staff and listening to those staff members, honoring their experiences and their pain. Cultural diversity is a core value for MCPS, and equity is a core component of our new strategic plan. We acknowledge the inequities that exist in our community and in communities across the country. We continue to learn from our students, from our staff members, and from our community members as to how we can improve our schools as it relates to equity and cultural diversity. We remain committed to ensuring equity through education, from how we teach history to how we address sensitive topics and how consequences are issued to students. Our school leadership and the local law enforcement agencies have been active partners with the community group, who facilitates dialogue on race. The community group hosts several events yearly to have open discussions regarding education, law enforcement, and several other topics that are important as it relates to race relations. We would encourage you to join these conversations. We want to extend care to all of you who are experiencing anger, heartbreak, and fear as you process the events of the last couple of weeks. Our schools are here for you. Please let us know what help we can provide to you. And signed by me and Dr. Meyer.
Okay, for me, I think I would be happier with the letter stating, and this is just me, that our nation mourned another tragic loss of life with the death of George Floyd and also many deaths that came from, however you want to say it. I mean, I mourn the death of the African-American sheriff that lost his life, the African-American man that lost his business and everything he worked for due to people rioting. I want to hear that as well. That's for me. If I'm going to put my name on that, I want to see that as well, because that wasn't right either. People destroying in the name of something else. I can use many examples that it's the same thing. I just don't think that's right. And I can't, that's where I have my problem. And any of the other stuff, I have no problem with saying and standing behind, but a lot of the actions that were taken were not right.
And the thing that started it off and the outrage
and that
for
can be
generations,
that can be in there.
For generations, constantly having to deal with the anguish. I don't even know the word to express.
And I understand, but it still doesn't
no, you
give
don't.
someone
You
right.
do not understand it. You do not, Jamie. With all respect, you do not understand it. You do not understand how every day you're wondering if you're going to get a phone call that your son or grandson or brother or cousin or nephew has been shot and killed. You do not understand that. You do not understand how every day you walk into a store and you're going to wonder how people perceive you, how you're going to be treated. You do not have to live with the fact that you're not given a job because of the color of your skin. Therefore, you're not able to provide for your family and yourself, and that you're seen as something less than in this country. You have no idea. You have no idea what that is like to live with every day of your life, and to have your children have to live with that, and to think that your grandchildren are going to have to live with that too. You have no idea. To see how it has affected your parents and your grandparents, you have no idea. None. I wish there were a way that you could. I really do.
But I never will.
And
I never will.
And saying that the reactions that people have because you cannot deal with this anymore, I don't agree with the rioting and looting also. But there are also people.
I'm sure you don't.
That's all they do is try to disrupt what the actual things are going on. But some of that is because of frustration. I've got to find some kind of way to release things.
I think, of course, particular name on this letter, because, of course, that was the tipping point, that started all the protests and the movement, I should say, not even a protest. So that's why the name of the person is there. But definitely our hearts are heavy for all the lost lives. And I think we want to support our community and students in general. So I see the name as a symbolic, obviously, it was a tragic way, of losing innocent person's life. But I think he is being a symbolic name right now that moving the movement forward and not lose the importance of it. So if you have the majority of the board's support, I'm ready to move forward with both of them. So I think at this point,
I do have some questions about the wording of the letter, and I wish that had gone out to us so that we could have feedback, have given feedback on that.
We still can do that, Ms. Franklin. It's again like the resolution. It just been put together today also when we received it's all happened at the same time. So we still can get an input. It has not gone out yet. So I've lost my light here. So moving forward, can we go back to resolution? And before we send the letter, we'll get your inputs. I think we have the motion and second, and we did discuss. So I think, Brenda, if you're ready, we'll hear the ayes and nays.
Miss Bond,
Yes.
Mr. Trebaka,
Yes.
Miss Franklin,
Yes.
Miss Graham,
Yes.
Miss Cass,
Yes.
Miss Parton,
Yes.
Miss Karan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, board. Now where I am.
So Ms. Cron, I'm unsure about the letter piece. Is the letter going out or not?
I don't think it should as written.
Yeah, Miss Franklin said not comfortable as written, and I think Miss Bond had concern too. So
okay. Then when do you want to settle that? Is that something y'all want to talk about now? To have consistent.
Thinking.
And do you want a letter as a board to go out is the question, or is the resolution?
Of course, that's the other question.
Or the resolution, do you want a letter or not, first of all, and then do you want this to be the letter, I guess is the question.
Well, I guess I would just, so the letter goes out with the resolution? Is that how it, is that the?
I think that was the plan.
That was the thought process?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm okay with a letter with the resolution, but I'm
okay with the letter, but not as written.
Okay. I guess the question is, what do we need to do about that?
Would you like to send?
I would like it to be sent to the whole board so that we could review it and give feedback on it. That's where I'm at with it.
Okay.
We can do that. All
bring
right,
it back. Would it be brought back next next Tuesday?
That's fine.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Any other? Are you all okay with it? Can't see everyone at once.
Do we wait to let the public know that the resolution was passed until then as well?
No, it was passed. It's part of this, part of what the actions were today.
Yeah.
Right. It's official now.
Right. I guess what I'm saying was, the letter was going to sort of go along with the resolution. And so I guess we can send it, if there's a consensus on the letter at some point, I guess by next week, then we can send it together as a reminder of the resolution that was passed tonight. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I don't think the letter has to wait until next week.
Yeah.
That's a letter coming from us. I just think we should have some input into what it says.
If we share it, tonight, tomorrow, and then we'll hear from you the next day. I mean, we can do it before the weekend, all right?
Well,
I'd rather not wait a whole week to do something.
Yeah.
I think we should move quicker on it. Can't we, or I don't know if we're allowed to, but can't we discuss it, look at it and make comments and then get it out in the next couple of days?
That's my question, Ms. Drake. That's a
if
question.
We discuss it as a board, it's a meeting.
Right.
If it's sent out to us and then we individually give feedback on it, and then something else is put together to show, then we can say, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. And once we have the board okay with it, we can just send it out.
That's right. So hopefully,
right, as long as we don't do a reply to all,
right,
and send our individual comments, then we are covered.
Yeah.
I mean, would it help to actually talk about it right now, since everyone is in the same place?
That's kind of what I thought. That's why I brought it up for discussion. I thought that's what we were doing. So I'm a little confused because I mean, I was doing that. I totally got shot down. So,
No, I mean, I wasn't sure
because There was discussion about the letter, the discussion about the resolution.
But that's all
mixed
I was
in
talking
together.
about was the letter. That was it. So I said where I came from. I'm done.
Ms. Franklin, what would you like to see in this
Okay.
letter?
I need to pull it up, or can you put it on the screen?
It is
Oh, okay, I see
right
it.
now.
I see it.
Yeah.
Because I haven't really had time. There are 2 points in it that that I don't feel good about it when I hear it. And one of those is a national event. We may not have people who are being killed right here, but those words make it seem like it's something far away, and you know, we're just kind of looking at it. But we here in this community feel it. I need to process the letter. I cannot do this evening.
That's what that's what I sensed. That's why I said within the next couple of days, because it's hard to. I mean, if it's me, I will print out and start marking and things like that. I can't really decide from screen. That's why I thought maybe it will be hard to fix it as we speak. And so let's send a letter to all board members, and if you don't have anything to add or subtract, you don't have to, or you can just reply as is. And the others, please send your edits as soon as possible. Now we'll get it out of our hands probably within this week still. Would everybody be okay with that?
I think that's a good way to handle it.
I am.
Sounds good. Now I think it's time for us to enter the closed session. Next order of business is closed session. May I have a motion to go into closed session to discuss 2 personnel matters as authorized by section 2.2-3711 of Code of Virginia.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
One point, I don't know how to do this because I've never done it before. Can we have a break before we actually start closed session?
Yes, I was going to suggest
I second that motion.
As soon as we enter, I was going to suggest, because I need to get to going to bathroom. So I think, may I have all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Now we're in closed session. Let's have, I don't know how many minutes.
If you want to take a few minute break, it's going to take me just a few minutes to get the Facebook stream stopped and get Ms. Curran as the host of the closed session. So
Just say 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes it is.
Okay. And I've got to stick around because of the